Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Sunday, the 22nd of March, 2015. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Zachary Burgess.
Woo.
And Robert Kemp.
Hey.
I'm not ill, despite what that might have sounded like.
You sound very enthused to not be ill.
It was annoying. It was like...
What, to get better? Or
No, to be ill in that specific way, where I'd been ill for like 2 weeks before the last time we were on a podcast, and then got better pretty much immediately afterwards. But it was a really annoying illness where it's like, I know there's something wrong, but it's not actually doing anything actual, like, illness related, it's just making me feel kind of shitty.
I hate that. I get that quite a lot. You just have a day where you're not 100%, but you can't really define it. Like,
This is a 2-week period.
Yeah, this was a 2 week of... It's like, I could tell there was something going on, and I was like, well, obviously I'm fighting it, because I'm clearly getting better now.
I just have random days of it. Like, I had one the other day that I was trying to explain to Gnome, and maybe you guys will know what I'm talking about.
Maybe it's a man thing.
Yeah, when I said, I described it as being cloudy. Like, there was a weight in my head.
Okay.
But that was it. It was strange. That was it. It's not like I was tired. It's not like I was particularly out of energy or anything. It's just heavy head, I suppose.
But was it like in your
eyes.
like a headache, like in your mind, or was it like you literally had a heavy head? Like
Well, that's the question. Yeah, if I put my head on the scales,
would it have grown? I don't think it's possible, unless you had some kind of ultra dense gas somehow inside your head.
yeah, I swallowed a gobstopper that launched itself in a tooth or something. I don't know. Some ultra heavy bit of mass that's in my jaw,
Like gobstoppers. Incredibly dense.
Yeah,
The densest.
I ate nut log.
Yep, that'll do it.
That's what it was.
That will increase the mass of your head. Everyone knows
Or
that
any
about.
part of you. Nut log.
Log.
Did you feel like you needed some kind of apparatus, like the equivalent of the bloaty head device, to remove the cloudiness?
And a nice popping.
Be a vacuum, surely, though. In that case, it'd be like, zzz, and it just suck all the cloud out into like a tank in a Theme Hostel style.
Is there any kind of like pressure or humidity thing you could subject me to, like some kind of barometric chamber that will just let the clouds like come out of my face?
Go climb up a hill.
Yeah.
So that might work. Yeah.
Are you sure you weren't on a hill when it was a bit misty and some cloud had ended up in your head?
I was driving down Bramford Road. The incredible heights.
Maybe it was a cloud of fumes from some chemical plant or something.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I'm just getting old man screen blindness.
No, walking down the street in streets in London, like waiting for a bus or whatever, I'm not surprised. Sometimes you see on the news that like the diesel fume rating of streets in London is way over the like EU mandated law, and it definitely is. It's horrible. Like
that has to be true.
Literally can't breathe. Well, not literally can't breathe, but you can't breathe very nice.
You can breathe shit.
Well, yeah, you could literally breathe shit on some of these streets. So
Also may not be true.
there was something where it's like going on the tube is like 2 cigarettes or something. I'm not sure if that's true, because otherwise there'd be a lot more outcry, but still.
I reckon someone's done that, like create some kind of shit vapor.
Done what? They've done what?
You mean aside from what naturally comes out of people's butts?
Yeah, like someone.
You mean deliberate shit vapor, not natural shit vapor?
Yeah, you know how you get like those like air freshener cans.
So in case you want to make somewhere stink really badly.
Something.
The opposite of an air
Someone's just
freshener.
vaporized a turd.
What, as like a joke shop thing, or as like...
just in general. Like, but not even like I don't mean like something that smells a bit like turd. I mean it's just taking a turd and turned it to gas somehow. No.
Okay.
No idea.
You could vaporize anything, couldn't you? You could probably blend it, like with one of those blend tech. Will it blend? Whatever. You probably
That
get
would
some
vaporize
smoke.
it though.
No,
You'd actually
how
need
do
to heat it up.
Yeah, would there be a turd smoke? Don't breathe this.
But you might burn it. Or how do you vaporize it? What's the process, Zach? Chemical engineer, Zach.
How do they like turn anything into those sprays? Like, do they just need to find some kind of liquid form, and then it's like
what sprays? What sort of sprays are we talking about?
Like an aerosol
sprays. Yeah.
Well, they're all because they're just like fragrances and stuff. They're not actually vapor. They're just a really dispersed liquid that happens to have scent in it.
It is, but isn't. I thought that was a vapor.
Not strictly speaking. It's like vapor is to do with evaporation, isn't it?
Right.
Probably everything you spray out. Well, some of the things you spray out of aerosols probably have like a lower boiling point than room temperature, I would imagine, help them disperse.
Maybe.
Alcohol-based and that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But not everything. Probably a lot of it is just finely dispersed enough liquid.
Would you just take like volcanic diarrhea, put it in whatever the substance is that
volcanic specific kind?
Oh yeah, it has to be the runniest.
Why? Where did this come from? What are you planning to do with this? Vaporize?
I don't know. I was just thinking, like when we were talking about
it's
breathing,
just going to
shit,
smell like.
I suddenly just started thinking, is this possible?
Useful. It's not going to be useful for anything. It'll just smell like someone's, had a curry or something.
Well, if you don't want like guests to use a particular bathroom, you could spray the eau de
but then you're not going to want to use that bathroom either. What is it? Because you don't want to have to clean it later or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're limiting the damage.
I see. So you make all the bathrooms except one smell of poop, and then that one will smell of poop shortly.
Exactly, yeah.
I suppose you just lock the doors on all the other bathrooms.
Because you don't
lock
them from the inside. Like, unless you have
quite a lot of modern bathroom doors, you can twist them from the outside as well.
True, but unless you hire people to stand inside the bathrooms the whole time, just with the door locked.
It would probably be well confusing if you did lock them from the outside. It's like, who the fuck is in here?
I thought everyone that you were expecting to come has arrived, and you're like, yeah? Then who the fuck is in toilet number 2? Because that's how I refer to my various bathrooms.
Yeah, obviously.
What's the deal with toilet cubicles, anyway? Like, why do they have that hole at the bottom and at the top? Or whatever. Why can't they just go floor to ceiling? Like a room?
Yeah, it's probably
it saves them having to put a vent in above
every one.
So it's like
just
cheapness.
Ventilate the whole room.
Yeah, pretty much.
See. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I have a disgusting bit of random that I probably can't discuss on air.
Well, good.
Yeah. Let's not discuss that.
I'll just keep that one to myself.
It was good. We can just make a sudden hard transition to my random story of the week.
Bosh.
Yep.
He hyped me up on this. I had like a trailer.
Well, I told Rob that it was an epically long, ridiculous story about dumb things that I was doing with my computer. And it is. That's all true. But it was a dramatically twisting story as like random new thoughts entered my head and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably do that. Oh yeah, I should probably do that.
Dramatic in your head.
Yeah. So it
was a roller coaster, except if someone had been watching it happen, it would have been just like somebody clicking some things.
Which form of epic music was playing? In your head.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't that epic. I don't know about epic.
Was it banjos? That's not very epic.
For some reason, I've got War of the Worlds in my head.
War of the World.
Yeah.
So it all started a month ago, probably more than that, when we got new internet. Fancy fiber internet, and it's ridiculously fast. If you're plugged directly into it,
yeah, cool.
If like me, you're on wireless. Well, so the first thing was I knew that my shitty, incredibly old wireless card was going to be a major bottleneck. So I was like, okay, I need to get a new one of those because I still wanted to go wireless. Having considered once again the prospect of just getting a really long
running a cable, which I still think you should do.
Yeah, I still think so too.
Have you ever considered those power line adapter things?
Yeah, that as well. But I was looking at the wireless cards because I was like, I haven't looked at these for, I don't know, 9 years or something. So let's see what they're like and how cheap they are now.
Super cheap.
Yes. So I was looking at them and I was like, well, I can get one that does like N and 5 gigahertz for like 30 quid. So I was just like, fuck it.
Yeah, it's a bargain.
So I got that.
Didn't consider an AC?
They don't really do ACs very easily at the moment, still, okay. Even.
I've seen one
and also
basic
the router
chips
doesn't go up to AC, so
sure. Yeah,
that would be future-proofing.
Yeah, I've seen one of basic chips that don't have like antennas out the back, that are relatively inexpensive. But
so I got a hold of that, and that led into the first part of this annoying story where my internet was still shitty.
Oh.
Well, basically, so I got this new thing, and it gets, at maximum, it gets up to like half of the actual speed that you can theoretically get if you're plugged directly in like the Mac downstairs.
Right. So
and I'm like, well, that's fucking fine, I guess. Like 30 megs or whatever.
That's all right, yeah.
It's like, that's fine. But then I noticed
megabytes per second, not bits, is it?
No, that'll be bits.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I thought you
like
could get
5
like
megabytes or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think the theoretical maximum of Wi-Fi is like 50 something.
Yeah.
And you can only really hope to get half of that because of the way.
Split.
Yeah, because it's bi-direct.
Up and down.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the maximum due to the frequency range and the modulation it uses for the Wi-Fi standard? Okay.
Well, the difference between like the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz band has nothing to do with that.
Right.
So it's.
Well, the first thing I did was put myself onto 5 gigs, which was more awkward than I thought, because it's like the card and the router both have the capability to do both simultaneously, apparently, except if you have them set to automatic, it always picks 2 gigahertz.
Right.
Even though there's a 5 gigahertz channel on both ends, and it can both see it, and it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So in the end, I had to like set the router to have a separate ID for the 5 gigahertz channel.
Oh wow!
And then connect to that.
You can do that on yours?
On the new ones,
yeah,
apparently.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was like, well, fuck it, I guess that works. I'll be the only one connected to that, but what the hell? And also, when I looked at my wireless scanning thing, I was like, I am the only 5 gigahertz signal that it can see. So every other of these like 11 fucking home hubs I can see from my room is not new enough for that.
Yeah.
Or just has it turned off.
Well, that means you should be like interference free.
You think so? Yeah. But then comes the second part of the annoying story.
Oh, God.
So I noticed my internet was like great and then got shitty, and then I realised it was still doing the same fucking problem that I had with the previous one.
Well, so it was reverting to a 2 gig channel.
No, it was doing the thing where for some reason my graphics card puts out an insane amount of interference, even on 5 gigahertz.
Oh,
it was doing it on the 2.4, and then I was hoping that the 5 would like avoid it, but apparently not. It covers the whole fucking range.
God.
I have no idea how that is possible, or what is even doing that. And it's like, it's incredible. I was thinking maybe it was actually on the motherboard or something, but then I realised that it can't be, because it's like, you can literally move the aerials closer and further away to the graphics card while it's under load, and you can see it affect the download speed.
Oh, really? Wow. that's fucked up.
So yeah, so that still sucks. And then when I was fucking around jiggling with like changing channels and stuff to try and avoid it, I discovered the even more annoying fact that like the channel that its signal channel is like the range of gigahertz or whatever the area of the signal it's putting it through, but like the channel that has the least interference from the graphics card is also the one that's slowest normally.
Right.
So it's like, I can either have really fast internet while I'm not using the graphics card, or internet that's more stable when I am using the graphics card, but it's slower.
Oh man, that's a pain.
So yeah, it still gets like 15 megabits even under the interference. So I was like, well, okay, that's still like 3 times as fast as it used to be.
Sure. I'm assuming at this point, like you haven't tried moving the slots about.
Well, they're literally as far apart as they can be in my case.
No, really, and that's still an issue.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's on the aerials. It's like out the back. Like I was saying, if you put the aerials further or closer, you can see it change.
Huh. That's fascinating. That's really weird.
Yeah, it's super annoying. So it must be the graphics card. I was always wondering whether it was the wireless card that had a problem.
Yeah, it must be. There must be something about the electromagnetic radiation that it puts out when it's going batshit.
It's like I need to put a Faraday cage around the graphics card.
Yeah.
just close it in.
I mean, maybe you could get a booster. The third way is to get like one of those booster boxes that are quite dumb. Oh, they're just a switch that's wireless, and then you could plug in via Ethernet, and then you could put that thing anywhere in your room or even in the next room.
Sure, like the Apple AirPods that I used to use.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a signal strength problem. I think it's just like an actual interference problem.
Yeah, but you could still move
like
it away from the source.
The signal strength doesn't go down when the interference goes up. It's like it doesn't have problems connecting.
But you're not going to get interference if you plug in Ethernet, right? So
no, obviously.
So if you could,
unless it's really bad, I guess. If you can get through the cable shielding, that would be pretty terrible.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that happening with graphics cards.
Because I was kind of at one point when I was looking at the various cards, the wireless cards to buy, I was looking at one which had the antennas on a separate like stand with a cable.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And I was like, damn, I wish I hadn't bought that now, because then I could maybe have put it further away and maybe that would have helped.
You could have tested, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, unless the radiation would permeate the cable to the antennas.
Yeah. Or like if it would have penetrated the cable where it plugs into the case, that would have helped.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's annoying, but at least my internet is on average a lot better now.
Yeah, that's still messed up. Well, I guess the next plan is get one of those 30 quid pair of power lines and see what happens.
Yeah, actually just plug it into a wire. Damn it.
I still think you just need to get you and your dad need to run the Cat 6 cable through the wall, like, and put in like a nice looking socket.
I kept thinking about that, and it's like it's as easy as that theoretically is. In our old ass house, it's probably not actually that easy running through, because it's a.
I guess you don't know where the beams might be.
Well, yeah, there's beams, and like the wall is like plaster on wood slats in some rooms.
You just need to run it through
like,
where the power and the for the lights and stuff. Just switch all the power off.
Well, also the other problem with our house is all the electric systems in our house are well dodgy, regardless of what it's attached to.
What was that one you were telling me about the other day with the lights or something in certain rooms, all like a bit funny?
Well, the lighting circuits have always been dodgy in places, but the one that happened most recently was the front door outside light.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
It was fine for ages. And then suddenly, for some reason, it had it so that when you hit the light switch for the front door outside light, it short-circuited the power upstairs, like the actual sockets, not even the lights. So it just blew out the power, like the breakers or whatever.
Oh, so bad.
So your PC would shut down the moment someone turned on the light. Okay.
So it was like, oh, okay, we can't use that. So then when we actually got an electrician to come and look at it, he took it apart at the plug and looked at it and was like, well, I have no idea how to fucking fix that. So he just installed a new plug in attached to like an entirely different part of the circuit, and that one's been fine, except he wired the switches up the wrong way around, so the switch that's further away from the door turns on the outside light, and the switch that's closer turns on the inside light.
Oh, but that's something you guys could do yourself.
Theoretically, but fucking around with these electrics at this point.
You just turn off your power. That would be good. Even I would probably be up for doing that.
But yeah, so that was dumb and ridiculous. That's the problem with the old ass house. And also I was thinking about like the actual wall that you'd be running that cable through. I'm not sure what sort of wall that is, because technically our house is like half an extension onto the original line of houses, but I think it's only half of our house is actually an extension. It's like it's weird. That's why there's that huge step up into our front room, because everything to the left of that side of the house is like an extension.
Sure. Oh wow, okay. So I never realised it was split that way.
Yeah, it's a double extension, right? Because you now live in an extension on an extension, right?
Yeah. So I'm in like the most modern part of our house.
The double extension.
So anyway,
the bit with the flattest floor.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's not wood floor. Wait, I'm sure it is made of some kind of wood. It's not actual planks.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was that. So after I was fucking around with that, this was the dramatic change in direction that I had, where I had a thought and decided to do something else. While I was fucking around with that, Avast had popped up a notice in my taskbar that said it needed to update, and I was like, I've always wondered whether Avast was sitting up my internet in any way. So while I'm thinking about it, why not get rid of it and put Windows Defender, Windows Live Essentials, whatever,
Windows
on
Security
instead.
Essentials, yeah.
So I did that, and naturally, that didn't change anything. So that was at least one part of this story that went well.
No, but at least you got rid of. I used to like Avast, but it became annoying after a while. So at least you got rid of that to the like zero problem security essentials, where it's just like it's nice and quiet.
It doesn't have a little icon that constantly jiggles to tell you it's doing things.
This is true.
So that
doesn't rotate.
That was that part of the procedure, but then that reminded me. This is where it gets dumb, because this was like a thought that was dragged up from years ago, and then I was like, oh yeah, that reminded me that I had never installed Windows 7 Service Pack 1.
Really?
Well, because a long time in the past, in like the XP age, I became distrustful of service packs after hearing many horror stories about how they can fuck up your computer initially, and then they like get fixed.
Yeah.
So I never installed service packs as soon as they came up. I was like, I'll wait a month or two just to make sure.
Service Pack 1 was good, though. Like Windows 7 one.
So I'd done that for 7, but I'd also hidden the update, so that's why I hadn't remembered up to this point.
Oh, of course, because you marked it as hidden, because that stops it from automatically trying.
Yeah, and that stops it from showing in the list.
Yeah.
So whilst I was installing security essentials, I was like, oh yeah, Service Pack 1, I can probably do that while I'm doing things with my computer, I guess. So I started doing that, but then I realised that I had no fucking hard disk space left on my goddamn Windows 7 partition. Because Windows 7 takes up a ludicrous amount of space, and shit insists on putting more data on that drive, even though it should only be the fucking operating system, goddammit.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
I wish the OS had more affordances to allow you to force data from everything onto some other drive. You know, there should be like a built-in thing where, like, say, like, okay, this is the fast drive, this is where I want to put... It should be an OS level thing rather than like...
They've been very slowly improving that since the arrival of SSDs, but it's still not great.
Well, that was what the next stage of this plan was. So I was looking at that. I was like, looked in my C drive and was like, where can I save any space at all? Because apparently I'm probably going to need at least 1.5 gigs to install Service Pack 1. Because even though it says like 100 meg download in update, I was watching the hard disk space. It's just like, whoop, filled it straight up. It's obviously copying and backing up and moving shit in the background. Yeah. It's not just the 100 megs it downloads. So I was trying to deal with that. So I went and looked around on my C drive, and I was like, what the fuck is in here that's taking up all this space? And of course, the one place that is always super annoying for this situation is like the users folder. Because games and shit will put stuff in there because it's tied to your login for Windows, and it wants to partition it off to users.
Right.
Which makes sense from a why you would do it theory, but it's really annoying from a fill up your goddamn C drive with shit theory. And obviously the biggest like criminal in that respect was fucking Eve. I went in there and looked at the Eve like cache folder, and it's like an entire fucking gig.
So it's just in Windows.
So I went looking around for ways to solve that. Like, can you move the cache in Eve if you know you're not going to use multiple logins or something? Which you'd think might more logically make sense, but that's not the case. But I did find a potentially really useful tool to solve this problem that lets you make proper junctions inside Windows.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah, that stuff.
So I was just like, I can just junction that and move the actual file somewhere else.
Yeah, that stuff's crazy.
Well, it's not quite as hardcore as the Unix junctioning, but it's not too bad actually. You can do some quite good.
No,
stuff.
but
you could just do it with an elevator.
It should just be a default thing that you should be able to do.
Well, you can do it with if you run your CMD in administrator mode.
Well, yeah, you can
set
do
them up pretty simply.
This program I have is basically just a batch file,
a GUI for that
command line things.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
but
not.
You must have to give it permissions, right? You have to give it like privileges in order to do it. Because I think you need to be an administrator.
Oh, sure.
Naturally. You need to be an administrator for fucking everything, technically.
Yeah. Oh, no, I can't remember. There was something, because when I was at UBS, you couldn't get admin privileges. Or you could get it, but you had to go through this whole process, and they'd give it to you for a limited time or something. But I never managed to get through the process. But there was something I could do with a standard command prompt that gave me something similar. Because it was useful, because there's because on the Unix-based thing, I use this npm link is really useful when you're developing like node packages, but it just straight up didn't work because it couldn't create the junctioning or whatever because it didn't have the permissions. And I was like, oh god damn it! I managed to find a way to do it. So yeah, it's useful.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because it's like obviously the functionality already exists in Windows 7 because they use it for like your My Documents folder because that is all junctioned and you can just put it wherever.
Yeah, the libraries feature, which I thought was a great idea and never quite works the way I expect.
Libraries is awesome, but they're sort of backtracking on that now. Like since Windows 8, I think they've changed how that acts.
It's a shame because it's a cool idea.
I think I prefer how I can't remember exactly how they've changed it, but I remember thinking when I read it, it's like, oh. I kind of liked what they were doing.
Yeah, me too.
The idea of it.
So I shifted the Eve cache off the C drive, and that freed up like an extra gig. And then I was like, okay, now I can install fucking Service Pack 1. Did that, and then of course when Service Pack 1 updates, 100 more updates appear.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to need more than a gig apparently, because another 500 megs of download has just appeared. So then I was like, well, now I'm totally fucked because I've installed Service Pack 1, but now I have to install all these other things, so I can even do them incredibly slowly, like 3 or 4 at a time, and just keep hoping that it leaves enough free space after it's done. Or I'm going to need to sort this out in a more serious way.
Which isn't easy.
Which isn't easy. So the first thing that I did to solve this problem, which was an incredibly lucky coincidence of something I did like when I originally got this PC, which was dumb, and has only just now conveniently paid off. The second partition after my Windows install partition was what was going to be my XP install partition. But I never did that, so it's just empty, and all it has on there is the page file. So I moved the page file off there, deleted that partition, split the space so 20 gigs onto my Windows 7 install, and reinstate the other 20 gigs as my now page file partition. Put the page file back in there.
Why?
I don't know, because I didn't want to get rid of that space entirely into one partition. I don't know. I liked having the page file separate. It's useful. Keep an eye on it.
Oh wait, so it's your page file for Windows 7?
Yeah.
Oh, for a second there, I thought for some reason that was the page file for the XP build that you never got around to doing.
No. So yeah, that was just my page partition. But so I got that extra 20 gigs on the C drive, and I was like, well, now I can install all these updates. But also, as it turned out, after I'd started reading some of the information about Service Pack 1 of the things it added was the ability to clean up old updates from Windows Update, like all the backups and shit that it automatically makes.
Vitally important.
Yeah.
So naturally, I did that, and it deleted 6 gigs.
Yeah.
I was like, well, fuck. If only I'd had this installed from the start, all of this problem would have been solved.
In fairness, now you're like, it was probably wise anyway to give Windows a bit more room.
Well, yeah, I know. That was when I originally got that PC, and I was reading about Windows 7 because this was like the first computer that I'd ever had with Windows 7 because it was pretty new at the time. And I was reading around like the Windows 7 forums. It's like, how much partition space do you have to use to make?
Well,
a
that's
Windows
the thing,
7
isn't it? It's like you can never really judge by those anymore because everything's a moving target.
Well, yeah, but then when so people were saying they were saying like, oh, you need 30 gigs, and I was like, that seems ridiculous, but okay. But so I made my C partition 40 gigs, and it's still 10 gigs more than they fucking said at the time.
Yeah,
and it's practically full.
So I have like a 64 gig SSD, right, which was expensive at the time. Now I could probably get a 256 or 512 gig one for less than I bought this one from. And it's not really enough. It's borderline. I mean, I can't use the system restore feature pretty much because despite the fact I have acres of space on my 2 terabyte hard disk or whatever, it won't let you. Probably with good reason. On the non-boot disk. Drives. Which I thought this is ridiculous, and then I looked into it. I was like, oh, actually, no, that probably does make sense.
In a weird way, given the timing of when I built Ice, I lucked out on this one because it's like SSDs were so expensive at the time I built it, and it's just like, well, fuck this shit, and got 2 1 terabyte drives, and it's been easy.
Yeah,
it's been easy. It's not been quick. Don't get me wrong, and my boot speed is appalling now, but it's
mine is still really, really fast. I feel like every time I feel like it's still fast, like I'm still amazed. It's probably because I spent so long with old computers or whatever, but it's probably normal for anyone else. But I'm like, okay, this is fast.
Yeah. I don't know what the fuck has happened to both this machine and my work computer, which I have at home. But both of the boot speeds on them are absolutely terrible. It's like I don't know what happened, but it just you're talking multiple minutes before they're ready. Like even after login, it's like
I think my computer's boot speed has never really got that bad. This computer so far, it seems to be relatively stable.
Yeah, I really don't know what does it either, because it's like it's cut down dramatically the number of things that actually launch, but it's just still slow. On my work machine, in fairness, I can sort of forgive because in the background I've got a full version of SQL Server booting up, which probably does sap quite a lot of that power when you first log in, and there's all kinds of stuff automatically starting that I know I'm going to use. Like Outlook, which takes forever to boot on its own, that's starting. SQL Server is starting. All the Git tools are starting. Everything fires up at once because I'm going to use them all. So that kind of explains it. On my work, on my gaming machine, OneDrive turns on. I don't know, maybe the NVIDIA drivers. About it.
Yeah, SSDs.
Even
awesome.
I have Saluto on to try and stop shit from like running on startup. It lets me turn a load of stuff off easily, but it's still slow.
Because I hear that Windows 8 is supposed to be even faster than 7.
Oh, Windows 8. Windows 8 is unbelievably fast.
But my 7's pretty fast with the SSD. So the combination. So my plan is to. I don't know how it's going to work with this free upgrade business, but my plan is that when 10 comes out, I'll buy a decent size SSD and stick 10 on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was thinking next machine, obviously Windows 10 will be out, and I'll just. At that point, it's probably best for me to just replace the entire computer at this point.
Yes, it really is.
Again, this one's not been great.
Your computer is barely holding its shit together.
Yeah.
Yeah, after I installed all these I installed Service Pack 1. It brought up a list with literally 100 more updates, and I installed all of those. And then every subsequent boot I've done since then, at least 2 more updates have appeared. Like, it will say, updates complete, and then, 5 minutes later, the thing will pop up and say, updates. It's like, seriously, can you not detect these ones in advance?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's annoying. And also, I guess the first thing I actually did was clean my goddamn case, which was nice.
Ooh.
Vacuum the shit out of it.
Yeah. I do that quite regularly, so given that
you have heat problems.
Yeah, and the fact that it's half open the whole time.
That too. But I vacuumed all the shit out of my case, apart from I was thinking about vacuuming my CPU heatsink properly, but then I remembered that my heatsink is such a fucking pain in the ass to get in and out of there. I was just like, oh fuck it, I'll just run the vacuum along the grills and hope that sucks most of it out.
Yeah.
You can compressed air that shit. That works quite well as well.
They say there's a risk with static discharge, well, not discharge, but that you create static if you either of those methods, to be honest. But there's no better way.
And I also very nearly fucked my case up by when I was cleaning the fans. Well, I wanted to clean the fans properly because normally I just vaguely vacuum near them, and that's sort of okay. But they keep a lot of dust on them, really fine particle dust that sticks a lot. And I'd had a lot of case rattles because I could hear the fans starting to get dodgy. So I was like, I'm going to do this properly. So I started taking the case fans out so I could hold them in place while I vacuumed each individual blade properly without them spinning or without it being incredibly awkward. But I nearly fucked myself because I forgot to make sure which way round the case fans were when I took them out and put them back in.
Wait, which one went where?
No, which direction they're facing. Because I have 3 fans. I have one on the front, one on the top, one on the back. And they have to blow in a specific direction in order for it to actually properly ventilate the case.
Surely they can only mount on one side.
No, they can't. They can mount it in either direction.
Oh, what, your fans have screw holes on both sides?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
So I was like, I did actually put one of them in wrong, but then when I booted up my system, I noticed that the temperatures were all a lot higher than they should be, and I was like, hang on a minute. One of these isn't the wrong way around, isn't it? And then I had to, I was like, how the fuck am I going to solve this problem? Because I don't actually know which order they were in originally, and you think it'd just be logical where it's it goes in at the front and out at the back and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the top one makes it more difficult, because I'm not sure whether that one was blowing in or out, and I was like,
I think the tops are usually intakes as well.
So I was like, I don't know. But luckily for me, very luckily, I had a single photograph of my computer, and I could zoom in far enough to see which way up the top fan was by the sticker on the middle of the fan. I was like, okay, that one's upside down. Let's just fix that.
So did it end up being an intake? Or?
I don't remember. I've already forgotten.
Fair enough.
Just remember next time to make sure you keep an eye on that.
I'm pretty sure the next machine I'm going to get is the next case I'm going to get is just going to have 2 massive fans on the front of it, just so cooling can never be a fucking problem. It's just it'll make it one large wind tunnel.
Yeah, it's your graphics card was the problem.
Well, that was the first problem. The 275 started overheating because of poor case fan placement, so there was no airflow to the lower part of the case.
Yeah.
And then the second problem is my CPU is aging, so I needed to get a fucking massive cooler just to cool that down on its own. So yeah, I've had all kinds of heat problems.
So my PC is all nice now, apart from has like a low hum that I don't think was there before, or maybe it was. It's like the fans are not rattling or grinding the dust or anything, but it's like this sounds different, but not like significantly enough to be an actual worry.
Maybe they're spinning faster.
Yeah, maybe.
How do you guys feel about the Windows 10 update? Like, are you going to do it, like, on your machine? Like,
hell no. My computer's old enough even by now that I would want to update an operating system over an old one on it.
I think
that's what I mean.
I'll get 10, but like I say, I have this. I probably can't just install it on this SSD. I'll probably have to get a new SSD, and then it'll be a lot more of a palaver. If I already had a decent size one, isn't
there also the problem that you can only get the update install of Windows 10 for free? If you're going to install it on a new machine, you're going to got to spend.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might have to try. I'll research it, but I might have to try. Installing my existing 7 onto a new SSD and then upgrading from there.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, that could work.
Because I won't be running both at the same time, so it should be fine. It's not like I'm reusing the license key.
No, that's true.
Because I can chuck my old install without losing any data or anything.
Because I'll probably find myself in the normal annoying situation, whereas I'll have, which happened to me last time I upgraded. Well, I'll have the old machine around for a bit because I can't be bothered to move my music environment.
It's
such a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
and actually,
I don't
in fairness,
have
there's nothing
really
wrong with this machine for music. It's it's not like the last one where like music technology had moved along far enough where the CPU couldn't keep up. This one still keeps up just fine with that stuff. But it's an ugly motherfucker. Windows 10. It should be more efficient, right? Rather than that's everything that they say about these like
that's
8
what they
and
always
10.
say about everything.
In fairness, they were as in like it should use less power to run normally.
Yeah, in theory, yeah, because they're trying to get it.
Because that was true of 8.
Because it should run fully on like tablets and things. So I guess that's they want to extend the battery life of their tablet. You want something running Windows 8, Windows 10 to have comparable kind of battery life to an iOS device, which is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean it was true. They definitely made improvements to 8, so it is a lot more. I mean, not just in terms of power consumption, but I mean in terms of CPU cycles needed to do things.
Yeah.
Like they definitely improved a lot there. I'm kind of hoping they'll do the same thing again, but who knows? I don't know. I'm in two minds as to whether I should tempt it on my existing machine.
Well, I'm still hoping they'll unveil some nice new features. You never know. Maybe they'll have some good ideas this time around.
They'll have Cortana.
Well, yeah.
That's great.
As soon as it becomes good.
I wonder if I will, because I don't talk to my phone, so I wonder if I'll talk to my PC. Because at least with a PC, you might be on your own in a room, like it might.
Sure. Well, it depends what the shortcuts are. If they are like getting around the Xbox One, bringing it back to games for a second, like at least if it's like the Kinect controls for Xbox One, where getting around is faster using your voice.
Yeah.
Then I'm all on board. Like, if I need to go to a specific control panel rather than root around the millions of tiny icons, say, to find the one that's relevant.
That was just
currently you can just type, can't you, and get most of the control panel stuff. So that's
sure, and that might actually still be faster.
Yeah.
But in certain cases, if it's smart enough to be able to do things like that.
But it looked like I can't remember, but it looked like the kind of global search everything and Cortana were kind of one and the same thing. So you could
They are, yeah. Cortana's taking over that stuff because it already has on Windows Phone. Like, search has been replaced by Cortana.
Right, okay, fair enough. So if it's literally the same thing, you might. The idea is, I guess, it breaks down the barrier for you thinking it's it's different to talk when really it isn't a different thing.
No, I guess.
I guess that's the idea. I'll have to see, but you never know.
Because Cortana on Windows Phone at least, lets you type your request in. Like, if you don't want to say it, it will still, and it will handle it in the same way. Yeah,
I imagine that's what you'll mostly do on a PC with a keyboard right there.
Yeah,
but you never know. It's quite nice to have a nicely integrated search. I mean, actually, the new spotlight on OS 10 Yosemite is really, really nice because it's quite big, comes up in the middle of the screen, and it gives you lots and lots of results from, integrated search results from the machine and also the applications and from the web and everything. It's pretty nice. It's like command space, and then you just go. Whereas it used to be in the top right corner, it looked like part of the OS that way. Now it's more of a kind of pop-up thing.
I had my first experience of installing software on a Mac today.
Oh yeah,
drag the icon
it's
from
still
one
a
place
weird.
to another.
Yeah, it's like an Xcopy
process that is.
Well, it's just an Xcopy install. There is no install. That's what's the weird about it. I still find it a very strange process because it's super simple. All it is copy the file, double click on it to run it. But like the way they do it, where it's like, okay, mount the DMG. Right.
Yeah. And that was a bit that really confused me. And then this giant window pops up saying, okay, now you've got to drive the app from whatever the thing is that it mounted into your apps folder.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and I'm just sitting there going, I had to turn around and look at Gnome and go, what the bloody hell is that?
Yeah, I mean, all it is put the file into the apps folder and then you're done. It's the next copy install. But I mean, the way they do it is hilarious because they pop up this little, often sort of themed with like a nice background, like Finder window. It's literally just a Finder window. And they're like, drag the icon into the shortcut that goes to your applications or whatever. And I find it especially funny where if you set your Finder preferences like I do in Windows, where it shows all the hidden files, then it totally screws those up completely because usually they have where the icon is huge. So then if you have a bunch of like hidden files, that little
they'll also be massive.
Finder, and they're all gigantic, and it's like, well, what the fuck is this? And then you have to, I don't know, because then I usually, so my process is like, oh, okay, double click the thing. Mount the thing pops up, drag it into applications, right? Okay, now close the thing. Now press F11 to bring up my desktop, minimize everything. Right click on the still attached mounted thing, eject it, even though it isn't a physical thing.
Does that unmount automatically?
It doesn't do it automatically.
Oh,
so you right click and eject it, and it's like, and then you click your applications, and you double click the thing to launch it, and it says, oh, you just downloaded this from the internet. Like, this isn't an official, like, this didn't come from the App Store. Like, this probably isn't safe. And you're like, then you have to like shift right click it and be like, no, I really want to open this. Seriously.
Weird.
And then after that point, it then remembers and you can put it on your dock and stuff. But like that whole process is like quite weird to me.
So don't get me wrong, I appreciate the idea of an install without an install, if you see what I mean.
Without all the registry shit.
Yeah, just having the copies there, have it simple. Yeah, that I'm totally on board with.
So how did they manage to screw that up?
Yeah.
Because it's so nice that you can just run it and it just works. Why do they have to have such a weird process to just get it in your applications folder? I don't know.
Also, Safari is fucking terrible.
Yeah, Safari's not very good. Although the new version is better, but Safari, I'm feeling like Safari is going to be the new IE. Like
I was about to say, I kind of like the look of it, like in the fact that it. But then it comes to a point where we were trying to troubleshoot some email issues. BT email, apparently it's all fucked up, and we couldn't get it to work with this brand new iMac at all.
Right.
So we were like trying to log into various servers and stuff, and it came up with a weird message saying, "We think your account's been compromised. Can you just confirm your password and change it right now?" At the same time, and I'm like, a bit of me was like, "Hey, this seems really suspicious because I just tried to log in. Why are you making me type my username and password again?" To do this thing. This sounds like a phishing page. And there is no way that I could find in Safari to check whether the page is secure or not.
Right.
Like sometimes it will show sometimes it will show a green padlock, but sometimes it won't. And there's no way for you to sort of dig into that to say, okay, am I secure or aren't I?
It's so bloody minimal.
So that was why I made an install process, because I put Chrome on there. And all of a sudden I was happy.
I mean, Chrome is so good. I mean, the thing about I don't know what's going to happen with Safari. I think they're in danger because, it's now the slowest updating thing. Because now Internet Explorer updates not that fast, but it updates with the Windows updates, I believe. So it's relatively evergreen, not quite to the extent as Chrome and Firefox or whatever. But it updates relatively. Yeah, Chrome updates constantly, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But anyway, But Safari only updates when they update the OS, which is like every year or something. And also what was happening was, of course, Safari is based on WebKit, which was an Apple project, but it went open. And obviously Chrome was based on WebKit. And what happened was Google poured resources into making WebKit awesome for the sake of Chrome. But then, like a couple of years ago or a year ago, they forked it because they were getting fed up with WebKit. Thing. So now Safari isn't benefiting from any of the work that Google are putting in to improve their rendering engine. So now I think they're kind of in trouble with Safari.
Well, we did encounter a glitch as well where a certain page wouldn't load properly in Safari, but then did in Chrome. And it's like, as part of this, trying to fix this internet stuff, which we didn't fix, by the way, because BT are terrible.
Right. I think they're one of our clients, actually. So,
like when I ended up doing the Service Pack 1 update, and it was like, I should probably do Internet Explorer 11 as well, I guess. That was a hidden update as well, I think, or it was tied to the Service Pack or whatever.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So I did that, and then I was like, there was a moment where I was like, is Internet Explorer still actually installed on my machine?
Yes.
Can you get rid of it?
It's possible to remove it in theory. It's just an actual difficult process because they don't want you to.
It's probably not a good idea either.
But so then when I remembered the one thing that I do use Internet Explorer for is basically opening GIFs and certain types of JPEG because for some reason Windows Picture Viewer doesn't render GIFs or certain types of JPEGs properly.
No, that is dumb.
By the way, top Windows tip, quite stupid, but I wish I'd known this years ago. This is the dumbest little thing, but it's possible to change that grey, neutral background of the Windows Picture Viewer to a different color through a registry setting.
I've never cared. Why is that a thing?
Well, it mattered to me because it was like I wish it was a lot darker. Pretty much.
Do people want graphite grey? Or
yeah, pretty much. Because when you're viewing like an image and like that's. When you're viewing a photo that's like the wrong shape for your screen or whatever, and it's like a night scene or something, you've got like masses of bright grey around it. And I quite like the Windows Photo Viewer. I'd rather not use like Picasa Viewer or whatever other thing. I'd rather use that thing because it's super simple. But it's just that it surrounds everything with this bright grey. It's like, no, I'll change it. Turns out you can.
You could probably use Adobe Bridge or something for that. But...
I know, but it's a bit overkill, isn't it? Anyway.
Maybe. But then, does that make the whole window that color, even the stuff around the buttons, or is it just the pane in which the image is shown?
No, it's just the kind of neutral background.
That's not so good.
Yeah. Anyway, top tip. not so top, like medium tip.
Bottom tip.
Keeping it real
Bottom tip.
On a medium tip.
So let's do some goddamn news before this.
Yeah.
Because we've already talked forever, and there's still quite a lot more to talk about.
News.
Not necessarily news, but also games.
News.
What's going on in the world of video games? I hear something's happening with Nintendo. Please educate me.
Crazy shit's happening with Nintendo.
Is it really that crazy?
Is it really?
Well, kinda. I mean, they've been so absolute about not being interested about this for so long, and then suddenly they go...
Well, arguably, one guy has been so resolute about not being interested, but he was the most important guy, so once he eventually gave up, they were like, okay, now we're doing it.
Pretty much, yeah.
That guy being Shigsy, is it? Or Iwata? Or
no, it's Iwata,
who? Yeah. Or Reggie? Oh, Iwata.
Yeah, in general. Hard to tell exactly. Iwata's the only one that really speaks about company message, so who knows who's really behind it. But
I guess.
So yeah, the thing that we were skating around just there is that Nintendo have committed to making smartphone games, along with a well-known Japanese or Chinese or one of those mobile developer called DNA, spelled D-E-N-A.
I don't know if you really say along with. It's more like it's not like Nintendo are also going to. It's like this is the partnership that's going to make these games. It's not like Nintendo games and Dina games.
Well, no. Well, the way I understood it is that they're using the frameworks that Dina have built, or Dina DNA, however you want to say it. Apparently, it's DNA. I've been told. So they're using the frameworks that they built. So the ideas of like having a single user login to access various Nintendo services all come from DNA. But the games themselves will still be developed by Nintendo. Which actually sounds awesome, if that's true.
Yeah.
It's not going to be.
Well, who knows? Who knows what they come up with? If Nintendo are going to do anything, and Nintendo are going to do anything themselves, then they're going to do it right, because that's what they always do. Like when it comes to the games, the services, okay, yeah, they'll fuck that up, which is why they got DNA involved.
Yeah, but they'll probably do like one game, and then it will be like many years before they bother to do another one in the way that Nintendo do it in first party.
Maybe you might be right there. Depends.
All they need to do is make fucking Pokemon on a mobile system, and they'll be good. Or not just a Pokemon game on a mobile system. I mean, like a special phone-based Pokemon. Because they can totally do AR shit and stuff on phones as well, because they have cameras.
Sure.
You can do all kinds of awesome shit with Pokemon in an AR.
Yeah, but then they could have done that with the DS.
They could have. But now that they're thinking about a phone, maybe they'll be like, what do phones have that we don't normally use very much in terms of a peripheral?
A shit ton more CPU power. Because 3DSs have accelerometers in them, right?
Yes, not great
yeah,
ones,
they do.
But they do.
Yeah.
But so does nearly every smartphone, right?
Yeah.
Basically, once again, everyone is hoping for Pokemon Snap. Because now you can do real-life Pokemon Snap!
AR Pokemon Snap. That could be amazing if someone pulls that off. They won't.
No, because they're not going to make Pokemon Snap ever again on any system.
It'd be interesting to see what they come up with. Like how far they'll go. Because there are obvious limitations with using a touchscreen for many types of game. That's why I'm not so sure a Pokemon game on a touchscreen is going to be great.
Why? All you need is 4 giant buttons for the different attacks, and that's pretty much fucking it. That's how they do on the 3DS already.
I know, but I mean getting around the world. That
I don't know. Fine. I think Pokemon, if anything, would work great on a touchscreen. I think that would look pretty good on an iPad. I reckon. I get what you mean about most games, but Pokemon, that would work fine, I'm sure.
You could make Pokemon work. I mean, it wouldn't be like core Pokemon. They'd have to change it up in terms of the movement and stuff. Actually, in terms of thinking about it, the newer ones where you have a slightly more free motion, that would probably apply much better than the grid stuff.
You could make it on a grid and just have like it being almost like a scroll. Like as you scroll, you're scrolling the literal world under your character, basically.
I mean, I literally was writing the other day, like, tap a tile and have a character pathfind his way to that tile.
Yeah, sure, but you're walking quite large distances in Pokemon, aren't you? So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you'd have to keep tapping, which might be annoying. But you do have to keep holding the button, though, when you're using the...
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that they might need to come up with something different. And actually, the most recent, was it X and Y, was it the last one? Yeah, the X and Y formula might work just fine.
Or, of course, they could just make a Mario Endless Runner, because, that's easy.
Well, that's what everyone does, though, isn't it? It's like...
Because Sega has just done that again with Sonic.
Everything's an Endless Runner.
Again?
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 Sega Sonic ones.
I know of 2. They did Sonic Jump, which was their version of Doodle Jump.
Yeah,
and
the amount of people
Sonic
I see
Rush,
on YouTube playing...
Was it Sonic Rush or Rush
Endless
Sonic or
Runners?
Something like that.
That's all I see, really.
What's because all mobile games are really, really good at, apart from puzzle games.
Because all you need is one giant button.
Yeah.
Well, they do like swipe gestures to like avoid in different ways and shit.
3D runners tend to do swipes for left and right.
Yeah,
for
3D runners. I see so many people playing 3D runners. It's ridiculous.
I remember those back. The first, I think, 3D runner I played on a mobile device was back on my Windows 5. Like Windows Mobile 5 PDA thing. And I found a version of it was a bit like the running stages from Sonic Lost World, actually, that you just had to swap lanes, but you were a ball rolling through very flat land.
Right.
But it was really hard. It's like these things have always existed pretty much since phones. Only now they make some amount of money.
Apparently, if all these people on the tube are freaking flicking their way,
I guess. Only not really.
Is it though? What about the NX stuff? Come on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There is a little bit more here.
Fill me in.
They wanted to be in the wake of this announcement. They wanted to make sure that, I guess, to put people at ease with this doesn't mean that we're leaving dedicated consoles behind. And I think they meant that in the sense of not only the Wii U, but especially the 3DS, I guess. They're saying, look, we're still interested in this stuff. We will still be doing it. there's a project going on which we're calling NX, which is just that. And everyone's like, ooh, tell us more. And then they go, no.
So there's been a bunch
and people
of like
immediately could
speculative,
decide whether they preferred the idea of it being a handheld or a Wii U replacement.
Who knows?
That's the thing. There's been a bunch of
seems more likely that
reportage from like Eurogamer on this stuff, especially like Digital Foundry seem to they had some insider like quote last year or whatever it was, but basically about the hardware partners.
Hardware parkers.
So it was like AMD and
we'll take this motherboard and make sure it sits in slot D4 in the parking bay.
And the British like graphics guys, what are they called? Not the Power VR
Crytek?
guys. What are they? No, like hardware
They're
people.
quite graphic.
The people that have the graphics chip in the iPad. And I think it's all the hardware. I mean, sorry, the hardware design. You know how ARM have like the CPU design. There's some British company that did like the GPU. I know it's all integrated, but the GPU stuff. I can't remember who they're called. Anyway, they were talking to them, and basically the Digital Foundry was saying that the idea. Well, there's even an Iwata quote, which is like totally public, which is the idea is that they don't want to have two architectures anymore because currently the portable 3DS and X or whatever and the Wii U are just totally different. Despite the fact that they managed to make quite a similar game happen in the Smash Brothers stuff. The architectures are just completely different. So the idea is going forward, they'll do something like iOS in that it will be, they'll have different powered hardware. Maybe they'll have a home console or maybe they'll have a portable, but it'll be the same architecture. That's the idea.
Which is admirable.
Yeah, that's what they're going for. So that's what the NX is about, I think. So whether it turns out to be a home console or some kind of or a portable or some kind of hybrid or whatever, it will be a unified platform.
As I say, maybe NX is the concept of both at this point. Like if they are trying to make two different things run on the same architecture, in theory they've got to be developing these two things side by side to make sure they can do it.
That's the idea, I guess. Exactly. So it could be two things. It could be one thing first and another thing later, hardware-wise, or it could be like they want to do iterative.
They might release it like that, but I imagine they must be looking at both.
Yeah, I think so. So this is kind of the idea. But, I mean, Eurogamer went a bit overboard, as I was talking to David about earlier, and basically saying the Wii U is dead. They're disappointed in the sales and they're just going to try and push out new hardware as soon as they can and bury it, which I don't think really buy. Because
that's not a very Nintendo way of doing things. Because if that were true, the GameCube probably would have died a lot earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I think the
Wii
U.
They're pretty much the GameCube didn't do well. Admittedly, it did better relatively than the Wii U has done, but.
They've pretty much done all they required for the Wii U because there's going to be a Zelda and a Star Fox, and that's it.
Yeah,
they've covered all the major games.
Yeah, I mean, they were speculating. They were speculating that they might do what they did with the GameCube, where when they brought in the Wii, they just put the Zelda that was developed for the GameCube straight on the Wii. So maybe they'll do that with the new. I mean, that doesn't sound quite right, but the new Zelda's
too
coming
close
out
for that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And.
All of this is still probably a couple years off. Let's not
exactly.
Usually a good, the first rumblings you hear about new consoles for definite are always like a good couple years before it happens. It just happens at this time that the first rumblings are official.
It's going to be a hell of a lot quicker than the next.
Then the next
PlayStation, Xbox console cycle. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Which is cool. It's good. Good that stuff happens. I think.
I was thinking about it, and didn't Nintendo or someone else already use the codename NX? I think it sounds familiar for some reason.
Well, it sounds like Next Step, doesn't it? The Apple thing or the Steve Jobs thing.
Lots of things end themselves in next, don't they? When they say for the next, like Xbox Next, rent around for a bit. I'm sure.
Yeah,
and. There was something else, some other gaming thing that was called something Next before the new consoles came out. Maybe it was PlayStation Next. I don't know. So that name flew around a lot in the run up to the new consoles. So yeah, that's what's happening.
Still probably a better name than
what's happening several years in the future.
Yeah, that's what will be happening. The question is do Nintendo wind down their Wii U production, which is probably saying not a great deal because it's not exactly been full throttle. I mean, Mario Party 10 just came out, but
yeah. Maybe
we
they
have
could...
got, as you say, we have got like 3 other games at least this year to look forward to: Splatoon, Zelda, and the other thing you said, Star Fox. How did I forget that?
The other thing you said,
Star Fox is the one I'm most excited for. God damn it! Yeah.
It's a shame they can't make a cheap, smaller Wii U that doesn't have the gamepad, because no one cares about the gamepad.
Gamepad is cool. I'm actually taking my Wii U with me tomorrow because I'm for work going to have to stay overnight somewhere, and I've done this before because then if the hotel doesn't have a suitable TV for me to hook it up to, I can just play on the gamepad. I like the gamepad as a concept. I think it's underused.
Oh, it is underused. I mean, that's the problem with it.
Yeah, they could have done a lot more with it, and they just haven't, which is disappointing. I mean, that whole asymmetric multiplayer thing, they never really doubled down on.
I think asymmetric multiplayer...
Doubled down.
It's just really hard to balance asymmetric multiplayer.
Yeah, sure, but they should, if anyone can do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I wonder how that... Because there is some of that in Mario Party. Like, because of like the Bowser mode, or whatever. Yeah. The one player is fucking the others up. And now I've got the Punch-Out song by Dwayne and Brand out in my head.
Good. Read some more news then.
5 seconds and I'm fucking you. It's got wind down. Punch-Out!
Awesome. Read your news.
Read my news.
Off your phone, which isn't turned on any longer.
Okay. You may be excited to hear the game coming from Square Enix. Third in a much-loved franchise. It's already been announced that it's coming, so I don't know why I'm building it up like this.
Yeah.
So Just Cause 3 is happening, but they announced a release date with a pretty awesome trailer. And that release date
made
is
the website for
by the end of the year.
We've known about that for ages. I've talked about that.
We all knew it was coming anyway, regardless.
Yeah, but now it's official. It's the thing. But the trailer is awesome. You should check it out.
I don't know if it's that awesome.
I think it's they've gone for the stylish side.
Yeah, it's a trailer. It's not actually got anything to do with the fucking game in it.
No.
Like, here's some flames and explosions.
It's a little bit...
and then it appears from Rico at some point.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, when Lost Island... Was it Lost Island? Dead Island. Sorry. Yeah, they over-stylized that trailer. It's that kind. It's not the same... it's obviously not the same trailer, but it's, it's that over-stylized trailer. It's an awesome trailer, but it's nothing to do with the game, really.
No.
Good contender for best trailer, 2015.
We'll see.
Thus
Do you
far.
even remember that by the end of the year?
I've already made a note. I'm keeping on top of shit this year. Talking about release dates. You know that thing that might have bought me a PS4, or that might have made me buy a PS4.
Oh, okay. I understand what that sentence meant now. I was like, there's some kind of thing. It's like not a person. It's some kind of monster that's forcing Rob to buy a PS4. It's a thing.
I would have bought it for me. Was how I originally worded it. No, there was a thing.
Yeah,
there was a thing coming that might have made me buy a PS4 this year, and that thing is no longer happening in 2015. That thing is Uncharted 4.
Yep.
It has been delayed until next year.
Well,
and PS4 really needs a big first-party exclusive that's good.
Yeah, but that is going to... I'm
glad that, if they're delaying it because it will end up being good, that's fine. But in terms of
they are.
Sony, in terms of Sony's output at the moment, that's pretty bad. It's like, I don't know, that I'm having the same feelings I had about Sony at the moment that I've had about most Sony peripherals they've put out. Normally, I have this about like the PSP or the Vita or the Move, and it's like now I'm getting that same feeling of what's going on about the PS4. It just doesn't seem like there's enough support coming out from Sony for it, which is somewhat.
they've done really well with the install base so far.
Sure, it's sold like buckets because on paper, and for most third-party games, I guess, it's a hell of a system.
It is.
But what the hell is going on with these exclusives? All the first-party content, it's just non-existent. this is the reason why I bought my Xbox, and it is paying off for me because I know Microsoft will deliver on first-party stuff.
Yeah,
with the possible exception of the Halo debacle. But,
I mean, I'd probably rather have Uncharted 4 than any of the Xbox One exclusives, actually. I think. Yeah. Yeah, what are they? Like
that is
the
one
Halo?
game over Titanfall, Sunset Overdrive, Forza Horizon, Halo. You know, there's been a lot of gold on Xbox thus far. And what would you really say about PS4? What is like? I don't know. I haven't got one. Maybe the Order, if you want to look at the pretties.
No,
but
that is very pretty.
Final Fantasy is coming. Well, that. I haven't made a note about this, but that technically is news. The Final Fantasy 15 episode Duskai thing happened as a demo. It's a very, and this is the thing, it's a very, very early demo. So they've come out and basically said, look, this is not how we expect it to look in the final version. This is not how we expect it to perform in the final version, because early indications are that it performs like dirt. Like it is, and I don't mean dirt the game, because that performs really well. I mean, it's just not there. It's not good in terms of frame rate. There are some weird image problems, like a lot of dodgy aliasing. It is not running at 1080 on either platform. The Xbone version definitely suffers more than the PS4 version. And in terms of a sort of presentation aspect, it's not so hot right now. But the gameplay is getting people excited.
For some reason.
Yeah.
I tried to watch a video. This was probably before the actual, I guess I was watching it from the Japanese release of this thing. So I was watching a video of some Japanese people playing it, and dear God, it was the slowest. Like, he was making no progress, and he was just running in circles for ages and fighting the same monsters over. He was probably saying really interesting shit in Japanese, but I couldn't understand that part. So I was like, I guess I have no idea what this game is still, because he's not actually playing it.
Yeah. I don't know. I remain cautiously optimistic about this one. There's a original feel to everything that I've watched and seen about it that seems... There's a cool... even just... I mean, I know it's all scripted stuff, but there's a cool sequence where it makes you feel like they're actually kind of scared of the big-ass monsters like behemoths and behemoths, however you want to say it. And that if you encountered them at that stage in the game, they would mess you up. It's like, I don't know, there's a certain... I think they're going for more of a consistency, perhaps, than some Final Fantasy games deliver in terms of their world. You know, there's always that weird thing where if you go back to an area that you started from, say, you go fight these enemies that look totally badass, but they're like level 1 or something, and you just kill them as a dude with sticks. It always seems a little weird. I mean, it's quite empowering in a way, but it just visually or as world building looks kind of messed up. But I think they're going for if as you get more powerful, for instance, then you can take on the bigger things. But they're trying to use scale, I guess. I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at? It's hard to explain. I don't know. It looks cool. It looks cool. Apparently, the vast majority of the polygons used to build those characters are in their hair.
Yep, no surprises there. Be nice if they look less dumb.
That would always be a bonus.
I've seen a number of those, Japanese style. You know when they do their sort of promo shots, and it's basically just everyone's face in a row, but they sort of cut them up so you only see a vertical slice of face.
Yeah.
It's there's one of those for Final Fantasy 15, and there's quite a lot of faces there. They all pretty much look the same, apart from 2 girls in the middle of it.
Well, at least there are girls. They haven't really showed that yet.
Well, yeah, there's about 10 characters on this thing, and there's 2 of them. Slightly underrepresented, it seems. There's no Vanille action going on.
Well, that you know of yet.
They've got to reuse that name, come on.
Yeah, that'll become a new classic like Sid.
Yeah,
every game from now on.
Vanille, or... I can't even remember his name now. What was the...
Saladcast.
Shit, yeah. That is a name. Yeah. Finally, 2 more bits of kind of news, I suppose. Sid Meier's Starships, after it was announced that it was happening, that came out pretty goddamn fast.
Which probably tells you something about that game.
I saw a little bit of quick look. I wasn't like.
Well, here's the thing: if you're into the normal depth you expect from a Sid Meier game, this is not the game for you.
But it didn't even look to me. It didn't look as attractive as like Sid Meier's Ace Patrol.
Right, sure, which is sort of quite simple, but
no, it was very simple. But I thought it was cool and like polished and like nicely done, and
it's mechanically interesting at least. Whereas this seems a bit by the numbers, basic stuff. I don't know. I mean, it's obvious that it's probably been tailored to the mobile audience. You know, the sort of more casual gamer. So they're not overwhelmed by mechanics, but for people trying to play the PC version of it, it doesn't come across well, apparently. There was a very informative article on Kotaku that basically said, Sid Meier's Starships, not that great. And then there was a very small article that basically just said, it's not that great. Didn't really tell you anything else. Quality news from Kotaku. Not that I'm saying that our news is, any good. But
yes, our quality news.
Our quality news. I've got some news about our quality.
Yeah.
It's decreasing.
It's gone down. Well, wow. Well observed.
And last bit of news?
Finally. Rumour mill again. I've seen... We've had that conversation not that long ago about how we weren't 100% sure if things like DX12 was going to end up on the X-Bone.
Yeah.
So, a phrase that I've spotted a couple of times across the internet, and not actually in gaming threads, like just doing my normal, reading my normal developer news, I came across that written in a couple of places that Windows 10 is going to be going to Xbox One in some form. So,
yes.
And of course, if they're doing a whole OS update on the X-Bone, does that mean that DX12 will come with it and all that stuff? It's like I don't think that's been officially said that any of that is happening, but I've seen it written in a number of places like it's a fact. And it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I really don't know what any of that really means. Like,
it could be
games on
just
the
media
Xbox
bullshit,
One run on top of the OS, or do they run
I believe they run on their own layer that isn't technically Windows.
Right, but
it might share some stuff with DX, I guess. Presumably it's DX11 underneath somewhere, but
because it seemed to me that originally the Xbox One had a reasonable chunk of power attached purely to a kind of side OS that was running for...
there's three OS layers on the X-Bone. You've got your application layer, which is more like Windows 8.
Exactly.
It is almost like that. You've got your game layer, and God knows what that is, from my perspective. It's probably still got a lot in common with Windows-y stuff, but it's a whole separate OS layer, effectively a separate VM, and then you've got your manager, effectively, that is like the Hyper-V or the... the VM, whatever is managing the VMs, I guess.
So it seems to me that they keep, ever since, in order to catch up to some extent with PS4 graphics, they keep downplaying the application layer and giving developers more and more access to as much power as they can.
Well, sure. The thing was, wasn't it? Yeah, recently that there was a small portion of CPU time dedicated to keeping the Kinect active at all times. And that's been, the developers can choose to turn Kinect off to get that power back.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's just one example, yeah.
Yeah. They said it was equivalent to somewhere between 5 and 10% of the whole console's power. It sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does seem weird. But if they're doing Windows 10 updates, maybe that will affect everything, but maybe it'll only affect the application layer and it won't.
You're probably right. Yeah.
You never know. I mean, it would make sense to. I mean, for me, the graphics driver is to do with the graphics hardware. It's a question of. I mean, on the PC, it's you'll need to buy a graphics card that supports a certain DirectX 12 features, won't you?
Yeah,
I'm sure. So,
anything that helps the speed of launch of applications on the Xbone, because that is the biggest problem. Actually, it's if you try and snap the party, for instance. from scratch. It just seems to take an age for it to actually load for you to be able to use it. You can't like tinker around with it like in between loading pauses, for instance, or because it just takes too long for the thing to snap and load in place.
I mean, that just seems sort of unforgivable, doesn't it? Really, if you compare it to like a phone, an iPhone, or something.
Oh well, yeah. Well, even I'm not even thinking about that stuff. But if you could just compare it to the 360, right? You pull up the guide and you can access all that stuff right there. I mean, yeah, sure. Some of the pages have the spinner, but it was still faster. So is anything they can do to speed that up? Or maybe this is part of it. Maybe they realised that this whole Snap plan wasn't exactly great, and they're just like, Windows 10, we're changing everything.
We shall see.
Who knows? But that at least sounds like Microsoft are doing what they always do with their consoles, which is review everything all the bloody time. Just like they did on the 360, so...
Yeah, they're a lot better in the middle of the cycle than they are at the start.
Yes,
some reason.
Definitely.
They always...
They turn it around. I think they always get ambitious and then realise, whoa, man, okay, maybe we're a bit off more than we can chew. Let's refine this. We've learned something now. Now we can make this awesome. Maybe. I mean,
they
maybe
keep
that's
forgetting
the only way you grow.
No, that's the trouble. Anyway.
They did this time. And that's all I've got for news.
Cool. End of the news.
Apart from that Fast and Furious thing for Forza Horizon apparently came out. I haven't tried it.
Blah. What have you been playing, Rob?
Well, convenient segue. I have been playing Forza Horizon. 2.
This for the first time, right?
2, yes. I didn't play this. I hadn't played... Oh, I played the demo before. And I hadn't played the first Forza Horizon game. So this is me experiencing the road trip for the first time, man. That shit is pretty.
Pretty.
That shit is real pretty.
How's that handle?
I mean, it's like 1080p, but it's 30 frames per second, which is...
No, I mean, how do the cars handle?
Well, they handle well. They handle well. It's basically using a lot of the Forza 5 model, but like arcadified to a certain degree. Like everything is much, even on the same settings as what I normally race Forza 5 in, the cars are a lot more manageable. Like partly out of necessity, because you're not a lot of the racing actually requires you to not be on the road.
Right.
Quite a lot of the time.
I noticed that. That seems a bit weird that there's so much off-road in a game with so many supercars and stuff. Surely they just flip over instantly.
Yeah, using the supercars on the off-road challenges is, or actually just going off the road with supercars is somewhat impossible. But this is where the game's design comes into effect. When you, as you go through the game, it's basically road tripping you between the various hubs around the world. And when you go to a hub, you pick a championship to sign up to. And when you sign up to that championship, it then gives you events specific to that class of car that championship is for. Mm-hmm. So if you pick a supercar event, which I haven't done yet because I've been saving my pennies to buy the really good supercars, the theory is that it gives you tracks that aren't off-road, for instance, because the events are tailored to those cars. Mm-hmm. And they can sort of do this because of the fact that it's open world. It's probably not too much effort for them to say, okay, we'll just change the ribbon of these events for this car class because we can. It's not hard for us. Whereas if you go ahead and pick an SUV class, for instance, that you're probably going to be driving through vineyards, like all the time.
Well, it is Europe.
Yep, there's nothing but vineyards, it seems. But it's quite a pretty game, it has to be said. Like it's doing a lot of great stuff. If you just stop, put it in photo mode, and zoom in at some of the detail, it is great. Like the cars are unbelievably well detailed. Nothing really in advance of what Forza 5 did, but it's still hella impressive. The thing this time round is that the lighting model is so nice. Like it really feels like a sunny European location. It's like they've just nailed that. And it transitions to rain quite nicely, and it has a proper day-night cycle. and it's all. I mean, it's just the look of the game is great. I mean, yeah, I wish it ran at 60, but actually, as it turns out, that becomes much less of a problem when you realize this game isn't really about precision racing. It's not really about nailing those lap times by a thousandth of a second.
No,
it's more about just having fun driving. And on the surface, it sounds like that would be kind of boring in a kind of The Crew kind of way, as what everyone said about The Crew. So, like, this is really dull. But somehow it isn't. It's like you're kind of okay just driving around the world, occasionally taking a detour around the back of a house to find an experience board that you have to drive through to get more XP.
Experience board.
Yeah. Or fast travel boards to reduce the cost of fast travel in the world. And somehow it's kind of nice. It's like, maybe it's just where I am when I'm playing it, and that it tends to be like, oh, okay, it'll be like 9 o'clock in the evening. I've got like 2 hours before I need to think about going to bed. What do? I'm a bit stressed out for my day still, and blah 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 blah. Because I've had a pretty bad couple of weeks with work, and it's and because I don't feel like I really have to care about it that much, it is kind of the perfect thing for me to be playing at that point in time.
Yeah. That's the sort of thing I like. That really attracts me, I have to say, Forza Horizon games. Obviously, I can't play it because I haven't got an Xbox One, but
which is a shame.
I would definitely.
It's one of those games I would really like all the Forzas that I would like to try on a wheel. You know, if Microsoft just put out a PC version, I'd be all over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it fills a niche that I like at the moment. I think, and it's weird coming off playing Assassin's Creed 3 to go into this with that same sort of, because Assassin's Creed, I suppose, when you're just wandering around the world, doing the collectible stuff and doing the side missions and stuff, it kind of has that same feel up until you hit Assassin's Creed jank, but which then like frustrates you like nothing else. But it's a quality product. I guess the only thing to say like against the presentation is that the more you look at it in detail, the more you start to find its rough edges, and there are a number of rough edges still.
Right.
I mean, the texture detail isn't as hot as you would expect from certain objects. For instance, there are places where the road texture, for instance, just doesn't seem as sharp as it should be, and there are certain places where like the number of polygons around a corner seems surprisingly low. Like you'll see like the road markings being sort of a number of straight lines rather than a smooth curve. And maybe that's just a glitch in the LOD system rather than a world thing. But when you spot them, it's just like, okay, wow, I wasn't, given how the rest of this looks, I wasn't expecting that to be a little weird. And it's there are other little details as well, like the shadow detail. If you stop, for instance, isn't very sharp. Like they've tried to make like trees have nice shadows because the shadows sort of animate, but not at the frame rate of the rest of the game. So that kind of looks a bit odd, and they're a bit pixely, which isn't so great. But then you realize kind of why it's like that, because the way the game simulates the day-night cycle, it's like it's actually moving the light source the entire time. Like every second, the light source is moving across the sky. But the reason why I say every second is because you can notice it do that if you stop, because you can see the angle of the shadows like tick over every now and then. So it's like chock, chock.
Oh, you can see the pixel movement.
It's not 100% smooth. Okay. While you're driving around, there's zero problem at all. But it's just like if you have to stop, which actually sometimes it's quite nice to do in that game because it is so pretty, and like the game encourages you to take photographs of things, and it's that that can sort of knock you back a little bit, especially when they've made conceits like, okay, we're going to have a 30 frame per second thing to make this game look as good as it possibly can, and then you spot these things that you kind of wish weren't there, or at least you didn't notice for the first few hours of gameplay because you were just in awe of everything else. I suppose it's the same with anything. The more you play something, the more wrinkles you find. But on the whole, very, very, very good looking thing, and it's got a great soundtrack. Actually,
Turn 10 either. Or who are they called again?
It's Playground this time, and it is their second time. I think. Yeah, Playground
but I mean on this console. I mean,
oh sure, yeah. They did a good job of working with. I mean, it's running on the Forza 5 engine effectively, so they did a good job of tuning it up to do what they needed it to.
No cardboard cutout, the photoshopped.
No, the crowd is solid this time. they move somewhat unconvincingly, but they move
in the grand tradition of like random people on the side of racing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see very much of them, which is like probably okay because the events are also spread around the world and stuff. You never really get much of a crowd. There's just like a line of people, perhaps somewhere, and it's fine. It doesn't really detract from the experience. You don't expect a whole grandstand full of people, if you know. What
about like when you're driving through the cities and stuff, like Nice or whatever? Are there people? On the streets or?
No, I mean it's absent of pedestrians.
Oh, it is. It's not quite Grand Theft Auto then. Okay.
No, I don't think they could get away with that. For instance, so
my brother was telling me that one of his friends that he works with used to be one of the animators on the team for the Grand Theft Auto pedestrians in 5. And she said that the happiest day was when they figured out how to make the engine do so they could get a guy to do a wanker sign, like a jerk off sign. They're like, yes.
We must have this everywhere.
So if you see that in GTA 5, it's that girl that did that. So,
but why would? Maybe that's just an animation, right? Or is it like making the top half do it? Or
it is just an animation, but I mean, maybe they had a certain toolkit that was available for, animations of the pedestrians that was a bit cut down compared to like a cutscene.
Oh yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah, because presumably they'd be walking or whatever, and then you had to have them make the sign.
Well, you'd hope it was the same engine that the characters used during gameplay, for instance. Like,
I don't know if it is though, because that's all like fully physicsed and everything. Can you imagine that for every single pedestrian on the street? I guess probably when you touch them, they turn into proper physics objects. Don't know if it's running the simulation on everything all the time. Maybe.
Oh no. But to a certain extent, some elements of that will be like how the bottom half has to keep walking while the top half does
exactly,
things or looks at things. Or,
anyway, it was just a weird anecdote. I was like, oh
yeah, interesting.
Anyway. But yes,
take your victories where you can, I suppose.
What are the? Is it mostly countryside, or is there like a few like street races?
There are street races. Yeah, there's a few like towns, like a miniaturized version of Nice.
Right.
Or, I mean, a very miniaturized version of Nice.
Yeah.
But it is mostly country.
Okay, that's cool.
And hills and countryside, because that's kind of what it does best. I mean, and that is again like a potential flaw here, and that it does that one look and doesn't do a great deal else. Because it's all set in the one location, they haven't bothered going to the mountains, for instance, or they haven't bothered taking you to some other wildly different climate. So it's all it's either very, very sunny or it's a bit stormy.
Right.
And that's about it. They're the only tricks it pulls, really. I mean, you very rarely just get a cloudy day that isn't rainy. For instance, it's either like really sunny or kind of dark and gloomy and rainy. So it only goes between those two places, which, perhaps they could have done a bit more work on to make the weather a little bit more varied.
It's always nice when you see in GTA, when you see a weather state that is really rare. Like when it really rains, like it's like or when there's a thunderstorm or something in GTA, it just doesn't happen very often. So it's always like, oh wow, this is like real life. I like that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice
to something that you only see every like X hours of gameplay. It's like,
oh sure, cool. You want something to sort of surprise you, don't you? And you're like, oh yeah, man, this is bad. Yeah, so I kind of wish it had a bit more of that. Like when you go to an event, for instance, the event's all like fixed in conditions, stuff like that, so things will play out the same way. You don't go to an event and it's rainy this one time, and then you go back and do that same event in that same championship. It would be rainy again. I guess for consistency of leaderboards and stuff like that, maybe, or consistency of experience. I guess you always get certain races in a certain style. Blah blah blah. I can see why they did that. But yeah, that's cool. I guess, as I say, the soundtrack's really great. A nice mix of like I think like the bass station is probably the best represented because there's a nice mix of like pop. I guess what would be pop dance tunes and some lesser known ones, and it's quite a nice mix. Whereas I didn't really recognize anything on the sort of rock station, and the other stations are kind of interesting to me because they're a bit out there. You know, they're not really well known tunes, I suppose.
Cool.
Which I guess might put some people off, but it's nice that it's quite varied. But I kind of wish that rock was better represented. You know, a few more like real quality tunes as opposed to just, I don't know. It kind of comes across as like kind of average indie sort of rock, I suppose. And it's like perhaps that could have been tuned a bit better. But generally nice. Like there's an Italian. So there's at one point because during the early phases of the game, every time you complete a championship, you basically unlock a new radio station, and it represents one of them by like some of the drivers are complaining that they've their radios are automatically tuning to an Italian classical radio station, and D-Bag McVoice then says, "It's fine, I quite like it." And then you do our next road trip you have with Wagner playing.
Nice.
Which is kind of nice, because if Gnome's in the room, I can make it slightly less annoying for her by putting the classical station on.
Yeah, that's quite convenient. You have a classical fan, just switch to the classical station.
Yeah, and I adjusted my sound stuff, so there's a specific sound mode to say give the music more focused than the engine noises and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I did that, and it's. I guess the one problem with and this is becoming a frustratingly common, I think, in that. Because the game is modeling a radio, I think all of the music has been through a radio filter.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sitting here when like Nero's Satisfy comes on, expecting it to be like real fat and beefy and bassy and stuff, but then I can't help but notice that it's somewhat radio compressed, and it's like, and yeah, it sounds like it's coming out of a radio, but do I really want that? I'm not sure I do. And maybe that's a licensing thing, because there's a lot of music there that maybe they had to make some concessions.
How is that a license thing? Here's the concession. If you want to put our song in your game, you have to make it sound really shitty.
Yeah, it's I know what you mean. But maybe maybe it's a cheaper license, like because maybe they can use a radio license as opposed to a. I don't know.
I wouldn't have thought that radio licenses would have had some sort of quality stipulation where it's like, you can only use this if you've transmitted it over the airwaves so it sounds crappy.
Well, in a way, they do that to stop piracy, don't they, in the radio case? Because the version you could record off the air just won't be as sharp as the one you'd get off
to stop piracy, product. I think that's just because old school piracy used to only have radios to work off, and now one day it's like, no one uses the radio any longer. I think that was a thing. I don't think
I agree with you.
Piracy was stopped. I think that was just piracy just moved on.
No, I agree with you in the sense that's probably not why that stuff was introduced. They introduced that stuff to compress the signal to make it so it's, I don't know, more audible through all radios, I guess. But you know, nowadays, what with digital radio, they don't have to do that. They don't have to compress it to shit if they don't want to. They could broadcast it in perfect quality, near enough. But they choose not to. They choose to radioify it, and I wonder if there's something to that.
Digital radio isn't that, you know, isn't that ubiquitous yet? Still, I
guess. But they still choose to do it. They could just run it through a different feed, you know. This is the uncompressed channel.
Well, yeah, but then if we're assuming that the person giving the music to the radio station is the one that's giving them this version, then they're not going to make two versions just to satisfy some people who are going to transmit it on digital.
I guess it probably makes it easier actually for them to not fuck up the levels.
Yes.
Like when the DJs are like mixing in various feeds and sound effects and I don't know, ad reels, whatever they call them, the sort of jingle stuff. Probably just makes it easier to maintain the levels like that because they all just get compressed out to one level, which is on. I don't know. I found that a little disappointing, was the thing. Because I knew the soundtrack I knew some of the stuff that was in the soundtrack before going into it, and it's just like, when you actually hear it, it's not as big as I want it to be. car sound systems, man. Car sound systems are supposed to be awesome. I want to be surrounded by the sound of if I'm playing in car, for instance. But no, they do the classic thing where it only comes out the left and right speakers at the front. Things like that.
Quite a lot of the cars, like 50% of the cars in that game, probably don't have a good sound system or a sound system at all.
I don't know about 50%, because 50% of the cars are just normal cars.
Well, that's why I said 50%, not like 90%.
Yeah.
Like it might be in most racing games.
Yeah, I still want it though. So that's a little disappointing too. But and the biggest flaw so far is that it does the thing that a lot of British developed racing games do when they try to be cool. And I don't know why this is a thing, but they do the thing where they have some British douchebag, constantly saying, "All right, mate, that's excellent, isn't it?" Or well done, you.
Why
and
can't they just all get stabbed in the heart? Those people?
Yeah, they try and set it up like you're the friend of this excellent driver guy called Ben, who happens to be a millionaire or whatever, and is putting on this festival so you can drive whatever the hell you want and stuff. And so it's like every conversation is like, "All right, mate," and it's like, the mechanic lady is constantly going, "Dude." Like it sounds really forced. Like you'll go to the menu to go do some upgrades to your car, and she'll be like, "Hey, dude!" Like the dude seems to last too long. I'd be like, "Dude." It really annoys me, and it annoyed me enough to make me play Dirt 3 to compare
to like see if it's more or less annoying.
Yeah,
great.
Dirt 3 is still worse, I think. Because the first race I completed, the American voiceover from Dirt 3 went, "You should upload that footage to YouTube. It rocks." And I'm like, shut the fuck up. But Dirt 3 says that stuff a lot less frequently than Forza does. Admittedly, the frequency of debaggery seems to be decreasing as I play. But I can see that putting a lot of people off. Real badly. It's quite irritating.
Yeah, if they could just turn down the debuggery frequency to 0, that would be ideal, wouldn't it?
It's just, I don't know why they feel like they have to. I mean, is it part of trying to evoke the festival? Invoke? I don't know what the word is there.
No, you got it right.
The festival feeling? Evoke the festival feeling?
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea, but I mean, they've been trying to do that. I mean, it's not just these guys. It's like Dirt 2 was trying to do a festival thing, and it had the same thing.
Oh, sure, but Dirt 2 doesn't directly talk to you, like, in terms of the managers. You have the other drivers complimenting you in a sort of badly acted, well, not really badly acted, because it's the drivers saying it, I guess, like, like Tanner Faust, or I can't remember other decent driver names off the top of my head. I can only remember Tanner Faust. It's actually them saying the lines, and it's like, I don't know, so it feels, I don't know, slightly more believable in Dirt 2, and it's never the drivers saying, "Oh, hey, this event's like this, you're going to need to know this, and by the way, excellent job, sweet maneuver," or whatever. I don't know, something about it. Dirt 2 does have a bit of that, but it doesn't feel quite so forced.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, and because Dirt 2 is so out there with its presentation, like by blasting stuff on the screen, making stuff explode periodically, having the sort of RGB blurs when stuff hits the camera and that kind of stuff. Somehow it all kind of gels in the way that I don't think it ever did with Dirt 3's triangles. Yeah. And to a certain extent, Forza Horizon's presentation is quite clean as well. Like, nice, bold text, which looks pretty good, don't get me wrong, but it's, I don't know, maybe it doesn't just fit so well. But also, those voices are just like super annoying. Just like, even if you took the presentation out of it and just had the voice, then you'd still be annoyed by them. I don't know why they do it. I don't know.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll learn. You never know. There's always hope.
No.
There's no hope. Well, okay.
They will keep trying. Someone will always try and be cool and hip and with it.
So, what else have you been playing, man?
Finished Assassin's Creed 3. Hence why I started playing Forza Horizon.
Oh, well done. You got through it.
God, did I?
Did they pay off with any interesting real world story stuff, or did they just screw everything up? Obviously not. I didn't think they actually would follow through on that stuff.
I mean, all right. Are we all happy for me to go into spoiler territory here? Do you think? I think it's good, right?
No one's going to go through what you did in order to.
No one's going to play that for you. I mean, all right. So Desmond storyline stuff, right? The payoff, in theory, like this whole game is about effectively acquiring some power sources to get into a temple that supposedly holds the key to protecting the Earth from an enormous solar flare that is going to cause all kinds of crazy stuff and basically wipe out most of humanity.
Okay.
So you effectively do that with your dad getting kidnapped at one point and you rescuing him, of course. Which results in you killing the guy that kidnapped you in the first game, which is you're sort of sitting there going, all right, great. And some other guy, like antagonist, that was supposed to be somewhat scary dude, who I can't remember if he was mentioned in the first games, sort of really anticlimactically goes a bit crazy and sort of kills himself. And it's like, okay, right, okay, that just happened.
Okay.
And so basically the very end of the game boils down to it feels like it's going to go in the direction of a decision, because you start having these two members of those that came before, I think is the official way of describing the crazy hologram people. Like the guy you see at the end of Assassin's Creed 2. They sort of basically say, okay, you have a choice. You can either save the planet from the solar flare, but that will be handing power over to Juno, who actually wants to enslave you all because she fucking hates you. Or you let the world die, but you guys will survive, or some people will survive, including you lot, and Desmond will effectively lead the start of the next civilization, become some sort of, I don't know, religious or philosophical leader, only for his words to be twisted and for the whole cycle of civilization to start afresh and the battle and humans be humans kind of bullshit begin again. And I thought that was, like, the way this was all being set up, I thought, this is going to be a Dylan ending, isn't it? And it's like, nope, Desmond just makes up his mind and says, I'm saving the world, fuck you guys.
Right, he just picks one.
And is like, we'll deal with Juno later if we have to. Desmond then dies, because apparently that's part of the process.
Okay.
Just sort of dies.
Okay.
And then Juno's like, now it's time for me to play my part. And that's pretty much where it ends.
Okay.
Yeah, so it ends in a way that makes you think, okay, are they going to do something with Juno then? Like, what's all this? What's the next step of this stuff? Or, like, what's going to be the war of humans versus whatever the fuck she's going to do? Because she claims that whatever she's going to do will be an instantaneous death. You will feel no pain. And it's like, but does she mean that what happened to Desmond, or does she mean that?
Not sure I care.
No, it's fucked up. But the worst part, and this is the worst part of the entire game,
okay,
is what follows. There's a credit sequence, but I think it's no secret just how many people fucking worked on these Assassin's Creed games.
So it takes a while.
Do you want to place bets on how long this credit sequence is?
20 minutes?
Yep. Pretty much. It's like 22 minutes, I think I clocked it at.
Okay.
And it's unskippable. And I was meant to be picking up Gnome at this point. So I started this. Accidentally started the end game, and it's like, oh fuck, right, I'm going to be cutting it fine here. I need to go pick up Gnome in about 15 minutes. So I got to the end of the secret, and the credits start rolling. And I go, oh fine, I've probably got like 5 minutes till this is over. Oh no, 10 minutes went by, and at this point, it's like I'm going to be 5 minutes late. Fuck. So I pushed it a bit further, of course. And it's like, it's still fucking going. So I had to basically stop the game and just go, right, fuck it, I'm going to have to go. There's going to be some end of credit stuff, isn't there? That I'm going to need to deal with before it saves, potentially. So whatever. Like, I shut it all down. Just force closed it. Went and got home, come back. Set that sequence off going while we cooked dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Came back to it just as like we were finishing off eating our food. And it was all like, all right, this is done now. And then it sort of goes through a very short sequence and then goes, all right, save. Now you're back in the world. There's some stuff to do. And I'm like, oh, fuck's sake. And it's like who makes a 22-minute credit sequence?
Jeez.
Unskippable, and it doesn't save until the whole thing is played. That is unbelievably bad.
That is awful. The fact that it doesn't save is like pretty unforgivable there, isn't it? Surely.
It's just, oh man, can't believe it. I can't believe it. Like games need, I feel like games need to provide some sort of warning when you're about to get into an incredibly long sequence that doesn't have checkpoints in it. Even if it's all canned or cutscened, or even in Metal Gear Solid 4, if you're about to go into a 40-minute cutscene, which is pretty regular, it should probably checkpoint somewhere between the cutscenes, right?
Yeah, surely.
I feel like games need to like be slightly better about how they handle this stuff if they're going to do stuff like. Because I'm not against them doing stuff like that. Oh, okay, I'm still against a 22-minute credit sequence, however you look at it, but with nothing happening. But if you're going to, for people with time restrictions on when they want to do this stuff, they should probably give you some means to not waste
to escape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, bastards. Well, par for the course, I would say now at this point. I think that was the height of hubris, wasn't it? Assassin's Creed 3.
Oh, sure. I still stand by everything I said, and they threw a lot at it, and not a lot sticks. It's a bit of a mess of a game. I think the ending sequences are quite clunky in terms of the Connor storyline. Like on the whole, it doesn't really work. I mean, it has the start is good, and the last few scenes in the main storyline are pretty well done. They are kind of when you basically kill the bad guy that you've been wanting to kill for the entire game. The way that sequence pans out is kind of cool in a way. Sort of reflective respect of the two people in a way of like you were a bastard. Oh no, you were a bastard. Sort of kind of deal, but without words. It's pretty cool. It's well done. But actually the mechanics of the sequences leading up to that are just like, oh man, seriously. It's like when it forces, like you should probably do it like this upon you, that the game sort of falls apart really. Like whenever the game tries to make you do a certain thing, it never really works quite as I think the developers intended or as you think they intend. So it always feels clunkier than it needs to be, or you cheese it in some way. Or, yeah, so
that sounds about right.
It's a bit of a mess. It's like some of that, I talked about that homestead stuff and like, why is this not happening yet? And like, why is that stuff? A lot of that stuff seemed to unlock at the end of the main game. Like I suddenly had a number of homestead missions turn up and I could go do that stuff to improve it. And it's like, but at that point, it's like, why would I care? Like, unless I'm going to 100% the game for some reason, like it's just giving me more stuff to do that should be less interesting than the main storyline, but in a weird way was kind of the reason I was playing that game. As I said before, just meandering around as a sort of relaxation thing. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weirdly structured, doesn't ever really fire on all the cylinders that Assassin's Creed 2 did. It's just weird. It's a weird thing. I find it. It's incredibly hard to recommend. I'm not sure I can. It might be one of the rare times where I just have to go, thumbs down, people, thumbs down.
Yeah, sorry, thumbs down. Don't play that one. Play the next one.
I mean, yeah, the boat stuff is pretty cool. So yeah. I'm quite looking forward to Assassin's Creed 4, provided they sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we should play that at the same time. Are you Assassin's Creeded out right now? Or?
Yeah, I'm probably going to give it a little bit before I go back in.
Right.
Yo ho ho. I want to be able to give like perhaps Halo and Forza a bit more of a shot before I do something else big.
Cool, yeah.
Stuff like that. I have been playing a bit more Halo multiplayer. I suck real bad, and it never feels like my fault. It's just I'm not having such a great time actually with Halo multiplayer as I kind of expected I would, which is a little annoying. I don't know if that's because everyone got good and I got bad, or Or what? I don't know. I'm just not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. So blog. Halo.
Anything else on your plate, or is it Zeg time?
Yeah, I will yield at this point.
Okay.
Maybe I'll remember something at the end, like I usually do.
Cool. Actually, do you want my quick update?
Quick update.
Today I played some Mario Kart 8, the DLC with the Zelda track. Have you got that?
I haven't. I was thinking of getting it for when I disappeared to take my Wii U with me to do that tomorrow. Yeah,
so I played that Grand Prix of the Zelda track and like the SNES Rainbow Road and
various F-Zero track, hasn't it?
And the F-Zero, yeah. So the F-Zero one's pretty cool, and I quite like the Hyrule track as well. I mean, the attention to detail in that one is really nice in the Zelda one because it's like the coins are replaced with rupees, and like even the sound of the slot machine for the power ups is kind of like opening chest. Instead,
oh really?
Everything, everything is like it's pretty sweet, I have to say. Though the actual circuit designs aren't necessarily any better, I wouldn't say. I think they're sort of maybe a little bit below the par of the.
But just nice theming.
Yeah, but the theming is really nice, and just generally it's like really quality, especially since it's free, I guess.
It's not free. It's paid DLC.
Oh, it's a paid DLC. Oh,
it's 11 quid for both the packs, and the first one is out yet.
Yeah,
the second one's due out in May.
Yeah, the second one's coming soon. Yeah, I think it'd be probably worth it, definitely.
£11 is a bargain, given that it adds 50. It will add 50% of content to the game.
Yeah. So it's Animal Crossing, isn't it? The next one, or
is the next? Which I'm less fussed about.
Well, the whole thing is good. On the strength of this one, I think it will be cool. So
yeah,
and it's tracks. So
it's a good excuse to get back into Mario Kart, which is on the whole a pretty great game. But
definitely, and I think it's kind of a success. This one, although I was shit, obviously. I think I chose a really bad cart or something, but either way, I was not doing well. Anyway,
I think there are some fucked up combinations you can make, but for the most part, it's like a cart really doesn't matter that much.
No, I think I sucked. What else? I played some Towerfall Ascension. I might have to get that so I can practice.
Oh, shit, yeah, that game is so good.
That game is really good. And I'm still playing Homeworld. Slight update on the UI situation that I was complaining about last time. You can double click on a ship to select all of that type within your view. So if you zoom all the way out and you manage to double click a fighter, it will select all the fighters. So that's more useful than that. I was looking for something like that. I was hoping for some option where I could select all fighters or whatever instead of having to bind those into.
That only works when you're zoomed out. You say you have to be.
No, it's like within. It works within your field of view. It will select all of that type, right? So if you're zoomed way in, then it'll only select the ones you can kind of see
on screen at the time,
which is actually sort of useful, because if you're you're leading an expedition away from your ship, then you're not selecting craft way back at your home base. You're only selecting the ones you're which I guess is kind of cool. But I mean, you have to kind of combine that with the groups, because what happens is you set a group of fighters or something, and then you build a whole bunch more, and they're not in the group, and you have to. And traditionally, it's like, oh, okay, now I have to find these guys wherever they've gone, the ones I've built. Sort of shift click on them, select them all, or like select everything in the area and pick those out of the little ones you have selected box on the bottom left or whatever. Then find the group that you have, kind of add them to the group. Now you can sort of double click and then sort of reassign the group more easily. I don't know. Anyway, there's an option that I wasn't previously aware of that is actually sort of helpful, because now I can have I can split my fighters into two, have them on group 1 and 2, and if I want to select them all, I just double click one of them and I get all of them. So that's sort of useful.
Cool. And are you progressing now?
That allowed me. Yeah, that allowed me to get a bit further. Although it's still a bit buggy. Like what happened was, I always think it's typical in these games. I always think it's going to be the last bit of a mission or whatever is going to be harder than what actually happens. Is you get a trickle of enemies fighting you all the time, and you're not really ready for them. whatever. So you think, oh, this is really hard. But then when you finally built up your force and you go on the expedition to smash them, you smash them without too much trouble. It's typical.
Oh, sure.
I used to always have that in C&C, where when I was going for the final assault on the enemy base, I would just totally destroy them. But in between times, it was actually a bit awkward because they were like coming at my base and stuff, and wasn't quite ready and all of this stuff. It's quite hard to turtle in Homeworld because you can't really. There's no like gun turrets or anything, or there's definitely no walls. Sure. So you can't like wall around your not really. But you can do some cool stuff, like you can literally come up behind them by going over them and under them. That does work because they have a kind of spherical or conical sphere of view. So sometimes if it's a big ship, so you can actually. If there's enemies either side and you can't go round them that way, you can go over or under, which is quite nice. And I was actually having quite a lot of luck splitting my forces. So I was moving my forces in the same direction, but I kind of split them on the vertical. So I had my kind of big frigates and stuff lower, and my kind of fighter destroyers, corvette dudes on a higher level. And I was kind of adjusting the camera so it was slanted so that I could fight them individually while they were basically fighting on two different planes, and that worked quite nicely. So I could kind of distract the enemy fighters and destroy them on a higher level because they want to move quicker, so I can like move them in and out, and covered my dudes, the big frigates were on the lower one. And I managed to also another thing that I was doing wrong that I managed to figure out that the game wasn't really helping with was like, so some of my corvettes were getting damaged in battle. And I wanted to repair them, and I had these support frigates, and I was like clicking on the support frigate and right-clicking on the corvette, and he says something like repairs in progress or going to repair, and he doesn't fucking move or do anything. So I clicked on the support frigate again, and then I clicked the thing that says repair like explicitly in the menu at the bottom right, and then click on the thing. Still does nothing. It took me ages to work this out. It doesn't because it doesn't tell you, but that works. So if you right click or you use the repair thing, it does work on a frigate, but it doesn't work on a corvette because in order for a corvette to repair, it has to dock with it.
Oh right.
And it doesn't tell you this, and also it makes the sound effect to say, "Yeah, I'm going to go and repair that." But what you actually have to do is get your corvette, tell it to dock with the support frigate, and it will dock, and then it will repair, the same as if you sent it to dock with the mothership.
Okay.
So it works, but it's just like...
Is the support ship bigger than the corvette, or...?
No, the support ship is bigger than corvette, because the support ship is a frigate, so it's bigger. So it makes sense that the corvette would dock with it, I guess, but it just doesn't look like it has a hangar bay. But when you actually say dock, there are like slots underneath it for craft to dock in. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because there seems to be like
it just seems weirdly inconsistent, though, doesn't it? Like with like, okay, you're moving this thing to here, but then I guess if you can move multiple craft to dock at the same time, then maybe it should be that way round. But then maybe your frigates should work the same way. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe you should move the frigates as the support ship rather than.
It's sort of confusing. What confused me was the fact that when you click on it and you click on the support frigate and then you right click on the corvette, he says something like "move into repair" or something, and he just doesn't do anything. And it's like, well, this is just broken. But luckily, because also like there's one button for dock, and I think they just dock to their nearest target. Because I was clicking dock. The way I figured this out eventually was I was saying, "Okay, corvettes, please dock with the mothership," and they were just going to the support frigate, which was closer. And I was like, oh, okay, this is how they actually repair.
She sort of worked it out by accident.
Yeah, exactly, worked out purely by accident. But anyway, so I'm sort
of... as long as they dock, is it like, so as long as they dock with something they repair? Like,
yeah,
if
I think
dock
so.
With your mothership, that will deal with it as well?
Yeah, that will do it as well. It's a bit slower, though, because it takes time to go into the mothership and out again. But that's kind of how you... I was talking about the scavenger dudes that you can, like, nick enemy ships and convert them to your side. It kind of grabs them. Two of them grab an enemy frigate, and they take it into your mothership to convert it into one of yours.
Okay, right, yeah.
That takes a little bit of time. Because it's a bit confusing with the mothership as well, because it has like it has one toggle, which is like auto launch, which is enabled by default. And with that on, anything that's inside will instantly launch, right? And the other toggle is don't auto launch, where you can go in and individually launch the ships. So sometimes I want to kind of have my resource collectors inside the mothership while there's a battle going on. So I turn off the auto thing,
Oh yeah, but then anything you build, if you're
then anything you build, you have to
still have to manually launch.
Yeah, which is really annoying.
Perhaps it needs a little bit more fine control there.
Yeah, and also what happened was it's still buggy because what happened was I finally finished this mission, and it was like, okay, I've defeated the enemy. Now I can like collect the rest of the resources that are here before I move on because everything carries on in Homeworld. You don't. So you might as well like just farm an area clean. Exactly. It takes a while, but I don't really mind because it's quite pretty to watch or whatever. But I'd captured 2 enemy resource carriers along with my ones during the battle. And then I went to launch them. So I just defeated the enemy and I went to launch them and it immediately crashed as soon as I tried to launch one of the enemy captured resource handlers. There's some bug there that it took me a while to work out what it was, but so I had to do that part of the mission again.
But not capture the resource handlers.
Well, then I saved. I still had the resource handlers from before, and then I just tried to launch it and it instantly crashed. I was like, oh, okay, I better just not launch those.
I don't know. Until next time.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, if I can never launch, if it always crashes, that's going to be annoying because I don't know if I can scuttle them while they're inside the mothership. Anyway. That's Homeworld, still going. It's nice and it's quite hard.
I reckon those are bugs that were introduced by the remaster? Or
probably. I mean, this game is like
the original.
The whole engine is completely ported over, so I wouldn't be surprised. For Homeworld 1, anyway. Homeworld 2 is probably a bit more similar to the original, but the Homeworld 1 is, I gather, quite different. I mean, the missions are the same and everything, and the ships are all the same. And the scripting is all the same, but it's all been ported to the 2 interface and engine, so
sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a new bug. Anyway, or it could be an old bug. Who knows? It could be a 15, 16-year-old bug.
Who knows?
Anyway, that's me. So it's time for Zach.
Cool.
You
ready? What have you been playing, man?
You ready? Bring it.
Well,
first
much shorter thing to talk about is there was the first major update to Infinifactory.
Ooh.
Where he actually added more levels, I guess.
Yay.
Which was weird. Well, one of the things that also came in this patch was he readjusted some of the earlier levels. And in my opinion, some of them that he changed is that's disappointingly, because he was trying to make it so that it's a more smooth difficulty curve or whatever. But so some of them he's changed to be, in my opinion, quite a lot easier. Although I haven't actually replayed most of them. I just went in and looked to see what was different. It's the product's different. It's not got that middle bit that was so difficult to deal with before or whatever. Or these bits are angled in a different way that's much easier rather than having to strap them on sideways. So I was looking at it and thinking, well, that's made a lot of these levels much easier. And that's kind of sort of disappointing. It's there needs to be a sort of secret toggle where once you've completed the level in the proper mode, there needs to be toggle into the hard mode where it goes back to the classic version or something. Or just you reuse those puzzles again somewhere else in the game somehow.
Or put an easier one before them or something. Huh?
Well, yeah, but the trouble with that game in general is that because of the products you're making, you can't really just reuse them straight. It's if you're making a satellite which has 2 wings and a middle pole bit, it's that's always going to be a satellite. I don't think you can have it made of different blocks and make it into something else subtly. So yeah, there was that. But then the actual new levels, as predicted, basically carry on the storyline that didn't feel like it was finished.
Right.
And not in it's not as fully realized as the actual story, because the actual story has those cutscenes and little dialogue things with the aliens only not really dialogue.
Blah, 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 blah.
And then during the levels you have the audio logs.
Sure.
And I thought it was maybe in the added levels it was going to be just all audio logs or something, but there is a little bit of there's actual characters occasionally.
Oh.
There are still some levels where it's just some audio logs, but that's fine too.
Any more dogs?
No more dogs.
No more failed dogs.
And I mean, strictly speaking, there isn't an actual cutscene in these added things. It's just the level sort of act as your cutscene, where it's the last level you're doing a specific thing. It's well, we've done that, and now we have to get the fuck out of here.
Right. And then that'll be
and then that's the end.
set.
Yeah, that will lead into the next thing, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then there's some new blocks and mechanics in the new thing. It's actually pretty funny because the new mechanic is a teleporter.
Oh, wow.
Which is basically exactly the same as the first DLC of Space Camp that no one played.
Right.
It's exactly the same. It's the same idea where basically it teleports one block at a time, and if it's like welded to anything, it unwelds it.
Oh, okay.
So you're basically taking big things apart into singular blocks and then reassembling them.
Oh, interesting. So you could is the idea that you could have big horrible products come in, like.
Yeah, basically. That's the difficult levels where you have to take this like tank thing and then disassemble it into parts and then reassemble it. It's more a problem of like ordering at that point.
Sure.
Because it's like it's not difficult to make things from inputs and outputs, but when you're controlling the inputs and the outputs, it's like, okay, if I'm going to have any chance of reassembling this, I kind of need to know what order these blocks are going to come out in, and it needs to be a logical order. Like I'd quite like all three of the tank tread bits to come through at once so that I can just build that and then get it out of the way.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So yeah, that's kind of nice, and it does have a pretty awesome effect for the teleporter of when you because it's just like a floating cube in midair that you send stuff into, but then you need to go through it to see the other side, and when you click it, it does like a cool sweep between the two environments.
Oh, nice!
And it actually looks really awesome. It's like totally smooth.
Oh wait, so it's not just teleport to another place on the map. It's like
it's just like a separate area.
Oh, weird.
And you click to go back and forth.
And you have to build a route there and teleport it back, or
well, depends on what you're doing.
Oh, interesting. There's like a whole. I didn't realize it would be like a whole separate plane. I just assumed it would be move block over here.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, because you couldn't have done it any other way because you could have just built an infinitely long conveyor belt if it was a separate area in the normal game. Because there's no gravity or anything. You couldn't have had two separate floating islands in the same environment and not just be able to fly over there unless it was unlike some weird enforced, like, no jetpack zone where you can't go through it.
I guess.
Or no building zone, but instead it's actually, like, properly done. Right? Like, this is a separate environment, so obviously you can't. And they also added...
It just doesn't occur, I'm not sure that it would have occurred to me that that's how they would have approached that.
They also added some nice new blocks that are unfortunately only usable for this, like, only for this set of levels, because unlike the normal game where as you unlock more blocks you can go back to the previous puzzles and use them in the older puzzles to make better solutions, the new blocks in the expansion you can't.
Okay,
they're only for this
only for the
section.
new levels, right?
Which is a shame because one of them is really fucking useful.
Because I guess it would mess up the leaderboards, right?
Well, they already have that problem with, like, the first time you play through the game, you're never going to be able to get a good score because all the good scores on that leaderboard are from people who have come back.
Sure, but then. Well, yeah, maybe that would have been nice.
And a lot of the leaderboards got erased when the levels got edited as well, of course.
Of course.
So that got rid of all those.
Because I suppose you could have, like, it would have been an excuse to revisit those levels, I guess.
Exactly. And, like, one of the blocks, the upside-down conveyor block, is, like, the most useful thing ever. Mainly because it solves the whole problem with the goddamn levitators. You remember how I was telling you in the video about the levitators where you send a block up and then you basically have to sense it and then push it out of the levitation zone to put it onto a conveyor belt or whatever.
Well,
now you just have a conveyor above it and it just travels along the ceiling.
You just stick to some sort of mag rail or something.
Well, it's still gravity operated in general, so you actually, if you want to travel along a roof of conveyors, you have to constantly be pushing it up or in, like, on every square.
Always be pushing.
Yeah, so you have to have levitators lined along the bottom. But that doesn't increase your footprint, of course, because they're directly below the conveyor belt.
Okay.
So it's actually really nice to just be able to levitate shit up and transport it sideways in a way that's more easy to do.
Well, I suppose that's an immediate improvement to any levitator level. Then, if you had that block, wouldn't it? Just
exactly.
Does it, or is that actually the problem? That if you go back and do those levels with those blocks, that it's like, well, you're sort of trivializing the puzzle.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. Because it's not like you wouldn't have that block the first time through. That's the whole point of the puzzles. Like the first time through, you have limited blocks, so you can't do it as well. And you come back and do it there. So there was that. I played for it. The last mission was a fucking ridiculous pain in the ass, but probably only because of the way I was doing it.
Right.
We basically have to build this thing, which is, I don't know if I can exactly describe it. It's like 2 donut-shaped rings of like 8 blocks stacked on top of each other with 4 pillars in between on each of the corners, and then the middle of the donut on each side is filled with another block.
Right.
So it's like this ridiculous 3D structure, and obviously you have to send all those blocks through the teleporter in the right order to be able to build that in any kind of logical way. So the way I did it was like build little L shapes where basically build each corner of the donut, attach it to the previous one, rotate it by 90 degrees for each of the 4 corners of the donut, and then shove the 2 extra bits in. But that was a big pain in the ass because you can't really weld a block that's in between blocks all around it very easily. Because of the way the welders only operate horizontally or vertically downwards.
Yeah.
There's like no upwards welder, which would make things a lot easier.
Would that not be the same as a downwards welder?
Not as much as you think.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like that you can't have them underneath pointing upwards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Right.
Yes, it was awkward, basically. But I eventually did it with a really... Also, it was sort of a restriction I placed on myself, but I didn't really think about it at the time. Which was I didn't use any, like, timers. Because there's really easy ways to make timers where you can basically just make a conveyor loop and have a block on it that travels past the sensor every so many ticks.
But how would you put a block on it?
Because you can just place a block on the conveyor.
Oh, what, the grey
yeah, the grey blocks.
Oh,
Any
okay.
blocks are... Because all the blocks are, like, you know, they're affected by gravity if they're not attached to anything. You can just place a block on top of the conveyor and have it go round in front of a sensor and make a timer like that.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
But I always forget about that, and I've never really bothered with it in any of my solutions, and I wasn't doing it in this one.
I suppose it's a footprint problem, right?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It does add to your footprint quite a lot. But then when I realised, I was like, oh yeah, I probably could have just used a timer and made this solution a hell of a lot easier, rather than just having like delayed sensors almost, where it's like you have to make it trigger the sensor slightly further up the conveyor belt so something can move into position before it gets there.
Yeah. Awkward.
Yeah, so I did that.
You should go check out the video, people, if you don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yep, again. And then the main thing I played, tons of, for a long time, was I played City Skylines.
Yeah.
I originally wasn't going to.
How SimCity is it?
It's like, I originally wasn't going to, but then there was a combination of 2 factors that made me do it, because, like, firstly, several people from the IRC crew were playing it, and that's always, like, that's sort of a more useful indication to me of, like, not review scores, it's just like, are these guys playing it?
Yeah.
Not that always gets me, because otherwise I'd be playing, like, Payday 2 or whatever, because that's, like, what they played for a hell of a long time. But once I saw a couple of them playing it and talking about it, I was like, okay, this looks like I should probably get in there. And then the other reason was, like, journalism, I guess. It's like, it looks so much like SimCity. Maybe we should see if it's any different or better.
Yeah.
So it's a little confusing, this, isn't it? Like, because it's not the same developers as Cities XL and Cities XXL, which has been under a recent... Well, XXL came under fire fairly recently, did it?
Well, it came out fairly recently.
Yeah, for being kind of naff and being a full-price product that is basically barely an expansion to XL. But their City Skylines is a different developer, but is also published by Paradox, therefore shares the brand name.
Well, not really.
Are they both not? Are they not published? Is XSL not published by Paradox? Because they're both called
so.
Cities, right?
Yeah, but Cities in Motion was the one that they made before City Skylines.
Oh, well, that's even more confusing.
Well, yeah. They shouldn't have called it City anything, but, you know, SimCity.
What else are you going to do, yeah?
They had to. I guess they had to put the word city in there somewhere, and they just couldn't use sim.
Yeah. I think as soon as they just called it Cities : Skylines or like something like Cities something, then that becomes confusing with Cities XL. It's like, it feels like brand name crossover.
There's
like,
a colon in there, though.
I mean, if they're not attached, then
They
what
could
the
have
fuck
got
is-
it Metropolis or something.
Yeah, I guess. They needed a city in there. It sounds more like SimCity that way. Because it's basically SimCity. In a lot of ways. It's like, they said that, well, there was an interview that suggested that one of the developers said something like, we had this plan to make this game way before SimCity, the most recent one, came out, but because we were a really small team, we didn't think we could do it at the time. And then it was like, well, after SimCity came out and was shitty, we basically had a look at it again and decided we probably could do it now that we had more people and more experience.
Okay, so they are completely separate things. Actually, I've just had to confirm with myself. Monte Cristo is the developer of Cities XL, and they self-published. the first one, but it's since been picked up by Focus Home Interactive. So it is a completely separate thing because this other one is not developed by them, and I know it's published by Paradox.
Yeah.
So yeah, completely separate things, just with confusingly similar names.
Yep. So they suggested that they weren't intentionally trying to rip off SimCity, maybe.
But it's exactly like SimCity 4, but with SimCity.
Not SimCity 4.
Well, it's no, I mean
it's more like SimCity, the most recent one.
No, but I mean mechanically, like in terms of probably how it actually functions underneath.
I don't know about that.
It looks like I watched some stuff.
You wouldn't know how SimCity 4 actually works.
I played quite a bit of SimCity 4.
You played quite a lot of it, but you wouldn't necessarily know the actual underlying mechanics.
It's probabilistic. What do you know? It's not actually running a simulation per se. It's using probabilities to figure out.
Well, this is running a simulation, sort of.
But probably not like the agent system, right?
It's got agents. They're just sort of simplified over the SimCity ones. So
That's
this was where my journalism came in, where I was looking at it and trying to determine
your journalism.
Determine how different and similar it was. The main thing that's obviously similar is it looks practically identical in terms of like UI, and it has like it has the coloured overlays over the white city thing for when you're looking at the data,
which is cool, but
and logical, I suppose, because how else are you going to do it?
Black,
make it look neon, black with bright colours on it.
Because why not?
I guess because you can't have any contrast, and that's how you actually see the buildings. It's much harder to do contrast starting from black.
Put grey on it.
Yeah, and it looks weird. You don't think of inverted contrast like that, do you?
It looks all blood dragon.
So anyway, like the agent situation of the simulation, it's like I think it's sort of midway towards New SimCity because it's trying to simulate. Well, for a start, unlike New SimCity, the individual people have a home. And they go there, and they come from there.
They don't just go back to any home.
So,
that's pretty good.
But the sort of restriction of that is like, well, for a start, the game doesn't particularly care whether they make it to their destination or not. It's like if a car ends up stuck in traffic for a certain period of time, it just disappears.
Oh.
It's just like if it's gummed up too much at some point, it's just like fuck it. And I'm not sure.
Well, I suppose it's like if it's possible to get input, like I don't know, like any simplified simulation. I suppose it's possible to create a scenario where it's like
infinitely jammed.
Yeah, but there's no way this could sort itself out. So like this wouldn't happen. So we'll have to take some stuff out of the picture.
Yeah, but
it seems sensible, right?
It's sensible in that way, but I'm not sure that really has any effect on the game. The only thing that I can think of that it might affect is like happiness. I have a suspicion that like your happiness rating is based on people completing their journeys.
Or presumably
to some extent.
Also recording commute time, right?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think... Basically, I'm not sure it actually... Well, for a start, I don't think industry or commercial care whether people actually get there to work. Commercial cares about incoming deliveries, so like goods. So if they don't get enough goods deliveries, then they eventually get abandoned. And industry sort of cares about incoming and outgoing cargo shipments. So it's like products coming in, products going out. But I'm not sure those either care about actual workers getting to them. It's like, so long as someone has been employed in that job, whether he turns up or not, they don't really care. But I think from the residential end, that's probably where the happiness comes in, I suspect. I think that's probably the only thing that matters. So yeah, the like simulation is a bit more simplified. Stuff just disappears constantly. What I'm really confused about with that is like how it sort of fixes that problem after it's despawned the thing. Because it's like you can track the individual people as they go to and from a place. So if they despawn, do they just like instantly reappear at home or something? I would assume so.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like, it's simpler than SimCity's more harsh, but of course it actually works better in this game because it's built around it being...
It's the thing about this whole game, isn't it? It's like specifically seems to be going out of its way to go, hey, what did everyone hate about that last SimCity game? Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah,
let's give
there's no multiplayer,
obviously. There's no multiplayer component. There's no, and it's quite clear that the size of the cities you can build are several magnitudes bigger than what you can in SimCity.
So yes, they are, but the trouble with that really is that like there's not as much content, even as SimCity, which wasn't exactly a massively content-rich game.
Right? You mean like in terms of the number of buildings, or the terms of number of facilities you need to construct?
Yeah, it's like the number of types of buildings that are, like created and the buildings you can place. It's like there's no real sort of there's no progression at all really, apart from straight upgrades. Because it's like you start with the graveyard, for example, for the dead people, and that sends out hearses to pick up the dead people, and obviously you have to worry about your traffic for that situation because the services need to use the roads. That's the main thing that traffic is a problem for. It's not so much about commuting, it's more about whether your city burns to the ground because a fire station couldn't get to somewhere.
Right, so here's some, just to prove the point here, just how well this has been going down, actually. There's some interesting stats on the Wikipedia page.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is the best-selling title that Paradox has ever put out, by some margin. It sold 500,000 in the first week. Which isn't bad for a city-building game, come on. What kind of mass-market appeal is that going to have? And
in theory, they should sell at least 1 million because that's about how many SimCities are.
Yeah, they've in the first week captured almost half the market that were pissed off at Maxis. Is what that means. That's crazy.
Well, it is cheap as well.
Yeah,
speaking.
Well, that was the reason why apparently The Escapist gave it a perfect score. For the price that you pay, is they've created the game that Maxis couldn't. And the other weird thing is when they started work on this, apparently the team at which is a pretty great name for a developer, Colossal Order.
Yeah.
Apparently there were 9 guys.
Well, yeah.
And it's you think of the resources Maxis had.
Well, that's why I said they didn't think they could do it initially, but then
that's amazing.
They came back.
It's a proper success story, you know.
It still could be better though.
I guess. Everything.
Yeah. So as I was saying before Rob interrupted,
stats. I just thought it was interesting. I'm sort of amazed by the existence of this thing and how well it's doing.
Yeah.
As I was saying about the situation of the building diversity is there isn't any, because you build the graveyard which handles dead people with the hearses, and then later on you unlock the crematorium which gets dead people with hearses, except now it doesn't. Basically the graveyard has a storage limit of 3,000 graves, whereas the crematorium you can just shove infinite people in there, obviously. And it's just that's just an upgrade. It's not really. There's no.
Never go back to the graveyard.
Yeah, there's no
trade-off.
There's no SimCity had the thing where you could upgrade the buildings with the little parts, and then you could tailor them slightly with different effects. You could.
Oh, sure, the new SimCity.
Yeah, the new stuff where you could have a coal power plant that has clean stacks instead of dirty ones, but they cost more and produce less power or whatever. And even the difference between the individual types of buildings in SimCity was more. And then police and fire or whatever, it's just small fire station or big fire station. I guess that was still technically the same in SimCity, but there was slightly more. In SimCity, you had the big fire station could be upgraded with the helipad, so you could have air fire patrol or whatever.
Did SimCity, the new one, have this thing where the catchment areas of the building, the school or whatever, is defined by things along roads rather than giant circles?
The spreading out method.
Yeah, it was trying to define through the agents, wasn't it?
Well, the thing is, it does that in this game as well. Obviously.
Yeah, that's cool.
but the trouble with it is that in this game in particular, and I think in some ways in SimCity as well, but because it's because the simulation is a bit simplified in this one, the way it spreads out, well, firstly, there's sort of some bugs about certain road junctions seem to just prevent it going through in some cases. It's to do with one-way systems and stuff. And one-way systems are always a pain in the ass anyway, because it spreads in the direction of the roads. So if you've got a one-way system that curls back on itself, the end of the one-way system won't be as covered as the start, even though the end is nearly as close to the building as the start, because it flows along the one-way road. But anyway, in this game, that probably doesn't seem to matter that much, because if you're talking about, say, schools, for example, in SimCity it was the coverage area was also affected by the school bus stops or whatever. Actually, it was only. Yeah, I guess it was only the school bus stops. That spread out your coverage area through the residential zones. Whereas in this game, it seems like if you stick an elementary school in one corner of the map, people from anywhere will get to it eventually, and it's more just like how fast the people in the zone get educated. So, like, the buildings nearest should theoretically get educated faster, but eventually everyone might get there.
Oh, weird.
And then that's balanced out by, like, how fast people are dying. So it's like, if you don't have enough elementary schools, it doesn't necessarily matter how much coverage they have. It's just, like, number of places.
That almost sounds like a side effect of the simulation style. Like, the people are spending more time
travelling. Yeah, in some ways. Except, I don't think there are any commuters for schools. I think it's just like there might be for the university because you do see people going there, but I don't think for high school or elementary school. I don't know if there is actually traffic to those.
Okay, I was just slightly worried about kids going back to random houses.
Yeah, exactly. The old
or
disappearing children
off the side of the map. Yeah,
get you in the school bus and vanishing forever. There's not any of that problem. But then, so the coverage mechanic of like how it spreads out the zone, it seems like. It's less important for like the actual coverage, like also for things like police and fire stations. You don't have to worry about actually having coverage everywhere. It just means that when you're further away, it will take longer. And for garbage and the graveyards and hearses or whatever, you can put them miles away. Eventually, everyone will get covered. It just takes longer and is less efficient or whatever.
Okay, that's cool.
So the coverage doesn't matter so much that way. But where it does matter is for like upgrading your buildings. So basically, everything starts off as like shitty low wealth, and then
I hope that's a technical term. I'm living in SLW housing.
Yep, shitty low wealth housing. So they all start off crap, but then as you educate people and as the land value in the area goes up, the buildings themselves can upgrade to newer versions, and that's sort of a version of density. Because you have low-density residential and high-density residential separately, but within low and high-density residential, there's also these 5 levels of upgrades that actually makes each of the buildings have more capacity within that density. So it's like a level 5 high-density building has like 26 families, whereas a level 1 high-density building has like 9 or whatever. So you can use, when buildings are covered by more services, that makes them go up the upgrade tree, so you can basically increase density that way.
Okay.
And the same applies for like commercial and industrial as well, obviously.
So I guess that gives you a reason to develop later in the game, I suppose.
Yeah.
To double up effectively your services.
Yeah, you can like that more or less gives you one of the few reasons to actually build the big services, like the big police station and the big fire station, because it covers such a vast area. Actually covering a vast area with one is not very efficient because of traffic problems, and all the fire engines are coming out in one place or whatever. So you're better off having like local ones, but the big ones are just good for covering a large area and just leveling up coverage to level up the buildings.
Yeah. Put those in later along with your local stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So I think in terms of like comparing it to SimCity, I think it just works better, but it's maybe not as complicated. And also mods, I guess, is important in this game.
Well, yeah, this is the big thing about this one, isn't it? It's highly moddable. And so, like, in theory, you could make the potential for this to become something as complex as SimCity, potentially, in terms of, or just, content rich.
Maybe.
It's right up there.
Depends how well you can make the mechanics work in the game, I guess. Because one of the first mods that turned up was, like, remove the disappearing traffic. Which, obviously that'll fuck you real quick if you're not careful about traffic.
Yeah.
Jam everything up. But it's like, that's probably just a limit of the game that's never going to be able to be solved, even if the developers have another go at it. I mean, there are certain things that are like, the way it assigns lanes for cars turning different directions is a bit dodgy by default. Like, a lot of the time, no one ever uses the fucking middle lane, because they're all either turning left or turning right, and
at some point
ahead of them, and they all try and assign to the one lane really early.
Right.
Where like maybe if they predicted a bit better what their routes were going to be, you might be able to have it be a bit more logical.
So, the middle road looks empty, and I'm not turning off for a while. I'll go that way.
Or like, I know there's another route 1 block further down, so maybe I can avoid this jammed up turning and go 1 block further along. And
but again, that was SimCity's problem as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. It's essentially a problem of like shortest distance calculation or whatever. Because obviously that's simple to program, but not very compatible with like complicated road management.
It's an PNP problem, isn't it? It's like, computationally hard.
Well, yeah, the shortest lake pathfinding isn't that hard as logical pathfinding.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It depends how many of them it's doing and how complex your city gets and how much that calculation gets out of control. Like,
I mean, arguably, I think it's sort of a problem of like how much emphasis you're going to put on the player. But one of the ways you could solve that is by letting you actually do like lane assignments. Be like, this lane is only for going onto this road, or these 2 lanes are only for turning left, or whatever. Because if you could assign that, you could actually because when you're making like a 6-lane one-way road, like 4 of those lanes might not be used most of the time because everyone's either in the left-hand lane turning left or the right-hand lane turning right, and there's 4 lanes in the middle. Some people going the middle route will occasionally use those, but they're not very many. So if you could like assign the lanes better yourself, you might be able to solve that problem. But then that's putting a lot of pressure on the player to actually get in there and do it. Because you could easily bollocks yourself up that way if you assign the lanes wrong, and then you're just like, I've made my traffic problem much, much worse.
Can you fudge it, right, by making the 3 lanes go to 1? Like, so, like when you come out of a 3-lane road, for instance, after a junction with a left and right turn, you go to a single-lane road, and then immediately go back to a 3-lane road. So you're funneling the middle lane through this one lane, like, so for when they go straight, you see what I'm getting at. So
you can sort of do it in some ways. It's like one of my like motorway junctions in this really busy area. I eventually worked out a way to trick it by you basically have these highway on ramps, which are basically single lane one-way roads, and they're more easy to like raise and lower and have tighter turns or whatever because they need to be for doing highway on ramps. But you can basically exploit that I had a junction where it was coming off a 3-lane motorway, so it's one directional, coming off this 3-lane into like a T junction, so it had left and right basically. But the trouble with that is that anyone on the right-hand lane of the motorway when they were coming in because most of my traffic was turning left, they were cutting across all 3 lanes to get into the left lane to do the left-hand turn, and that was just jamming everything up.
Right.
So eventually I made the like overpass off the highway have a split above the road and come in on both sides. So anyone who was turning right took the right-hand ramp and ended up on the right-hand lane, and anyone who was turning left took the left-hand ramp and merged into the left-hand lane rather than cutting across the highway. So it's like basically you had to merge from both sides in order to filter out the people who wanted to turn right.
No, weird. Well, can some of it be solved by potentially just having off ramps for which direction you're traveling?
Well, I mean, you always have
the left. This is the off ramp to turn left, and then like seconds, like on some motorway junctions in this country, we just have like an off ramp to the left to say, this is where you want to go if you're going to turn left, and then a few. Well, I mean, that's basically a few hundred yards down the road, you have an off ramp for right.
That's basically what I had. Apart from it was like the actual off ramp was split midway through.
Sure, yeah.
But that's that would be easier if you could make people get in lanes sooner, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like if you said anyone who wants to turn left has to be in the left lane before you exit the highway, that would probably help.
But then that's probably a problem with that's the opposite problem to what you're saying about in towns. Like with 3 lanes.
I mean, the main problem is not so much like. Well, the main problem in this and SimCity, as it always has been, is like traffic lights. Because as soon as you get to more than a two-way, well, no, it's to do with like how many lanes there are in the road. So if it's one way or not, but then like, so basically one way split lanes are yield based, and one way merge lanes are still traffic light based, like everything else. So if you have a one-way system. If you have like a one-way road that people are going onto, that'll be traffic lighted, so the one-way road will get a traffic light. If you've got a one-way road, but there's a junction where it's only going off, that's not traffic lighted, so people can always get on that smoothly. So then that factors into when you're doing like the highway, which is naturally one way. You don't want to junction that straight onto a road that's going to cause traffic lights, because then the actual highway ramp part becomes the traffic light as well.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can merge it onto a one-way loop, basically roundabouts, is what I'm saying. You make highway off-ramps that lead onto a roundabout that's like raised above the highway, and then split off from that to make it go into your actual city, and then that's much smoother. Like actual real world road building techniques, roundabouts. Except not really highway roundabouts as such, because you're also building the roundabouts out of highway tiles. Which isn't quite how they work in real life.
No.
You can't drive at 100 miles an hour around a roundabout most of the time.
Try.
So yeah, that's basically quite a lot like SimCity. Only slightly simplified, and generally for that works better overall.
Yeah, interesting to see what the mod scene does. As I say,
I mean, the developers have been
concept.
suggesting that they're not done yet either. Like they want to still add some stuff. They already basically patched in a mod, as you do, when someone comes up with something that you already should have thought of or already did think of and just didn't have time to put in, which was the first one they patched in was basically the one-way street reversal. You used to only be able to lay one-way streets in the direction you wanted them to go, which was a pain, but now you can just right-click on them and flip it.
Oh, I see.
So,
Handy.
thumbs up, is it, for this? Should I play this? What's going on?
Probably could. I mean, the other thing about it, I guess, which is sort of important, is that it's more based around having things behind unlock walls that are specific. Because in SimCity,
I saw that.
In SimCity, it's like a lot of the stuff you just can't build because you don't have the money.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it's like an actual progression based on your population. So it's like you don't start with schools or garbage dumps. You have to build up to a certain level of population, and then those unlock.
And that's kind of cool because it kind of directs what you need to build next.
Exactly.
You're not like overwhelmed with like what services do I need to provide right now?
But that sounds potentially like a mod right there, right? To turn the progression.
Well, there is. There's like the unlock everything mod. Yeah. That's the default with the game. That's not even a mod. Okay. They just call it a mod because it's in the mod menu.
Right.
So yeah, I mean I think that sort of helps as well because it makes it like more of a structured game, I guess.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. I think because even when I was starting with SimCity 2000, I was like, oh crap, what do I need? When? I can't remember. Water, electricity. Start with that. Then when do I need school or fire? Like
didn't they sort of try and encourage that, but only when you got to like the special buildings? I don't know, like
well, in SimCity 2000,
the choices.
In SimCity 2000, stuff unlocked by date, like the literal date of the year of the city. So if you started in the early 1900s or whatever, you didn't get trains until like 1920 or whatever. Not strictly the same thing, but
no. But I meant like I think it was it SimCity 3000 where they started doing this, where you would get to a certain point and then they would be like, oh, they want to build a casino here. Do you want it? Like they would sort of have progression.
Yeah,
in that
sort
sense.
of. I mean, the SimCity 3000 stuff was more or less like. Those were unlocked based on the condition of your city, where it's like if you have a certain crime rate, then the casino pops up and says, "Yeah, we want to build a casino to fuck up your crime rate even more," or whatever.
Because why not? I always got that.
And this city Skylines also sort of has that as well, because there's what they call unique buildings that have special unlock conditions rather than being attached to the population progress. Like all the basic stuff is unlocked to the population, whereas the unique buildings have 40% crime rate for 3 weeks or whatever.
Okay.
But they're basically just fancy parks. They don't actually have any other function apart from making the area nicer and attracting a few tourists.
Okay.
Even if they look like a giant office building.
Does tourism actually play much of a role? That feels like an untapped part of City Sims.
I mean, I think it plays possibly less of a part than it did in SimCity, which was fairly important in some ways. Like your commercial zones could benefit, like it actually made them happier in SimCity if you had tourists. Whereas in this, it's just like a bonus. Like if you get more tourists, you just get a little bit of tax income from them.
Okay.
So yeah, that's that. It's pretty good. I played it a fucking lot. I built one city, and
how has this impacted your Mass Effect runs?
Very badly. I might go back shortly. I think I'm reaching a point where I need a break. But I built the first city where I was going up the unlock tree for the first time, where I didn't know what was going to unlock in what order, and I didn't really I hadn't
focus down on the systems well enough to be like, this is how I should build my traffic routes, and this is how I should build my bus routes and stuff to make them work well. So my first city was functional but not great, and now in my second city, I'm like, okay, now I can do this better. Now I can maybe make the achievement for getting to 100,000 rather than stopping at 80. Because 80,000 is where you basically have completed the unlock tree, but then there's an achievement for 100,000.
Sure.
So I was like,
well, presumably is there not stuff for like going much bigger than that? Cause...
No, it's only Steam achievements only covers up to 100,000 and like unlock 9 tiles worth of map, but you don't actually have to build anything in them.
Right. Surely it's
Right.
possible to go much bigger than that.
Yes.
I think
There's a convenient mod for unlock all 25 tiles.
Oh, jeez.
If you want to build the most ridiculous city.
Oh,
I'm not sure if your computer would be able to handle it at that point. I suspect 9 tiles is maybe like a limit for a reason.
Yeah. Just to put that in perspective, one of those tiles is basically the size of a SimCity city.
Yeah, more or less. And it's you sort of realise that as soon as you start playing, where you're like, I'm going to start building, and then you're like, this looks sort of exactly the same size as the SimCity zone, in terms of like how many buildings and roads I can fit in it.
Yeah, and then you realise, oh no, I can this isn't it.
Yeah.
There's a reason for the rest of this area being so big.
Yes. And also the land is really cheap, which I think maybe is a bit weird.
Yeah.
Whereas like you can buy the next tile, it's only like 5,000 quid. It's like that's half as cheap as a police station. I guess they did want you to be limited. Also, I haven't really had any problems with money in this game. Like after the first couple of thousand people, the like initial setting up and struggle, it's just like I'm always making ludicrous amounts of profit. So I
should probably need a hard mode.
Yeah, well, I mean there is one. That's another one of those built-in mods.
Fair enough.
Turn on hard mode. But it's just like I've already got like £2 million, and my population is like half as big as my other city where I had 4 million. And then I spent like tons of it building that fucking space elevator, which was pointless.
Of course.
But the space elevator is like at the end of those special building unlock trees. There's like the uber special buildings that just give you a lot of tourists. Well, no, actually, the space elevator gives you a lot of tourists. The other ones are actually special, like the medical center, which acts as one giant hospital for your entire city. But you have to get all the way to 80,000 people before you can get that. So it's an actual reward, I suppose.
City Skylines.
Yep, it's pretty good.
Cool.
Zach thumb of approval.
It genuinely sounds good, I have to say.
As I said before, it sounds like the game everyone wanted out of SimCity.
In many ways.
Not entirely.
Not quite.
If you compare the price of SimCity to the price of this, and then take that as a percentage, and then basically convert that into what proportion of the game it is, that's probably pretty accurate. It's like this game is probably like 70% of the game SimCity was trying to be, but it's more functional overall, so it's okay.
Okay, sure. So it's scoped according to its cost.
Yeah.
But actually achieves what it's scoped.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the way to say it.
Okay.
Cool. I think we're way over, aren't we?
Yep, we sure are.
It's time for the end of this podcast.
Yeah, is that the time?
Yep, it is.
Thanks for joining us, listeners.
Bloody hell. Yes, we have run long.
More cities next time, I expect, among other things.
Yeah, quite possibly.
And probably some more videos to come up. Is that true from you guys? I saw one come.
We're getting very close to the end of Final Fantasy. I don't know. I think we've got 2 videos still to put up of that. But
we do. I've got the one of those ready to encode. Second one I haven't started processing yet. I think we're out of other Steam stuff to put
We're
up.
nearly done with Final Fantasy 7. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So look out for the end of Final Fantasy 7 on our YouTube channel, Happy Salad. And
probably not before the next podcast.
No, it's probably a month or so away.
But still, enjoy our relatively new theme tune, and catch you next time for more Saladcast. Bye.